Tonight, the DCU kicks off with both Bat-Mite and Bizarro on the same week. A real ballsy move by editorial. Green Arrow gets a new writer, which means that Felicity straight up doesn't exist anymore. And Omega Men comes out this week with issue number 1, meaning I'm just gonna gush for like 10 minutes and you can't stop me. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 196 of the Not So New 52. I am your host, and can I even call it that anymore? Can I actually, I'm like not even kidding here, can I even call this show the Not So New 52 anymore? So for anyone who doesn't know, New 52 is done. Branding wise. We had the New 52 and there's big old letters on all the comics that says the New 52, and then Convergence happens, and after that we don't have the branding on there anymore. The current period that we are in is the DCU, Y-O-U, which is hallmarked as described by the creators as not really caring about continuity all that much and having a much larger focus on just making something for everybody. You know, we're going to have some weird books now. That's the kind of company we are for exactly 1 year. Whether it works or not, we will discover over the course of the next year. It has its highs, it has its lows, same as New 52. However, it is a different branding. So question remains, is this the Not So New 52 anymore? Do I have to call this the Not So DCU, which frankly doesn't really work. I'm not going to change the branding, obviously, but I did have a comment on last week's episode basically saying, congratulations, you did it, you finished the New 52. And I'm grateful, thank you. But at the same time, I was thinking to myself, I got 50 episodes left, bro. I hope you're not dipping out on me now. We still have a lot more to go. So yeah, I think that's basically everything I wanted to cover. Told you about what the DCU is. We got a bunch of new titles. That's the other thing that happens with DCU. We've got, I think it's like 24 new titles coming out of this. A lot of cancellations at the end of New 52, but then we're easily replaced with a bunch of new ones as well. So let me list off what we got here. In terms of order, I have none. So we will be talking about Bat-Mite, Batman Beyond, Action Comics, Bizarro, Green Lantern, Omega Men, Green Arrow, Justice League, Wonder Woman, Lobo, and Midnighter. Out of those of note, the Wonder Woman issue is actually an annual. That is something that they were wrapping up the previous arc from before Convergence, and we're just getting it done here. And then we'll launch into the new stuff later on this month. In terms of new series, we've got Bat-Mite, Batman Beyond, Bizarro, Omega Men, and Midnighter. Those are all new series. And Justice League is also beginning the Darkseid War. So that's happening. Additionally, I almost forgot about this entirely. So about a month ago, I said that in the back of all of the second issues of the Convergence tie-ins, there were sneak peeks to these upcoming books. I said I wasn't going to do them because I just didn't have the time. I didn't want to go into it. It was its own separate thing. However, in prepping for this week's episode, I realized that a lot of those sneak peeks either add or are directly lead into issue ones of these new books or the continuations of the old titles. Like Action Comics, the sneak peek is a necessary read before you go into that. So as much as I really don't want to, I am going to do all of the sneak peeks as just kind of a little preface right in front of the rest of the comic. Now, Justice League and Wonder Woman do not have sneak peeks because Justice League's was already done about a month ago as part of a free comic book day tie-in, and Wonder Woman's, this is the annual. This isn't going into issue 41 yet. So just know that that's not there, but everything else I'm covering the sneak peek before I go into the comic. Additionally, dear God, there is so much to get done here. DC got rid of the comic book families. What do I mean by that? Well, previously on this show, I tried to keep a general order of things. I would start with the Bat family books, go into Superman family, go into Green Lantern, go into the Justice League family, which is basically all the other heroes. Then it went to the Edge section, which is Stormwatch and your more edgier titles. The Young Justice section, which essentially was only Teen Titans for like ever. And then the Dark books, which consisted of your Swamp Things and Justice League Darks. But they got rid of the families, so now every book just kind of exists on its own. Visually, I use a color scheme to determine what family each book goes into. I'm still going to be using that, just best judgment for all of these new titles as to which fits into what family. And then in terms of the order of things, fuck it, we're in the DCU. I can do whatever I want. Continuity doesn't matter. So I'm going to do things from here on out in whatever order I feel is best. Don't like it, don't care. So for right now, let's kick it off with still an event book, which is usually what I would lead off with anyway. Justice League number 41, aka Dark Side War Part 1. Justice League number 41, written by Geoff Johns, art by Jason Fabok. So last issue was just kind of like explaining the DC cosmic and like all the different crises and Darkseid and all that sort of stuff. But we get the idea of Darkseid War is going to be Anti-Monitor versus Darkseid to some extent. So we open up this issue somewhere on Earth. We see a wine glass being poured. Someone's enjoying it, saying how much they've missed this stuff. And then in walks a woman who is running late from her job, saying like, oh yeah, you know, this deal fell through and everyone's sick out with the flu. Like, I can't believe how much this day has gone from a good day to a bad day. And the voice that's got the wine glass speaks out and says, yeah, that tends to happen when we're around. And it's immediately revealed that it's someone from Apocalypse. Turns out it's Kanto, the assassin, and he's like, is your name Marina Black? And she's like, who are you? Where's my husband? Why are you in my house? And as she's yelling out for help, he just summons a knife out of nowhere and throws it at her, and she's dead just immediately. And then in walks another new god by the name of Lashina, who's like, yeah, this isn't the Marina Black we're looking for, man. And he's like, yeah, I know, but like, screw her, right? Like, I may as well just kill her. And then he goes off for a little bit on like, you know, this wine is pretty fantastic, all things considered. Like, would you like a glass? And Lashina's like, this place sucks. Why would I want anything from Earth? And he's like, don't knock it till you try it. So he pulls back the knife. It turns out it's actually his mother box. And then he says, all right, let's go on to the next one. And then they teleport out of there. We then go to Mr. Miracle, aka Scott Free, as he is working his way into some highly secured location. He gives his entire backstory, you know, son of High Father given over to Darkseid. He suffered in the pits for a bunch of years, and then one day he managed to break out of his cell, and then he just kept on doing it, and soon he was unable to be held by any lock, key, trap, anything like that. So he managed to escape, and he joined a rebellion, and it's all against Darkseid, and he took the name Mr. Miracle. And as he was doing so, he has recently discovered, and I do need to make the clarification, Mr. Miracle, Scott Free, literally has to be the same one, because there's only one of them in the multiverse, was in the Earth 2 book. And at the point of World's End, he was still with that crew. None of that is mentioned. None of it is even implied. Pretend it doesn't exist. So we instead pick up where he's saying, oh, I've discovered that Darkseid has somehow found this extra power. He's launching a new attack on the one Earth that ever managed to fight back against him. And as such, I need to find out what it is, and I'm going to need the help of that Earth's heroes, aka the Justice League. So then we get Wonder Woman. She's kind of our narrator de facto here, talking about how she compares herself to the Justice League and how she's like, yeah, looking at it, we're all very different. One's an alien, one's a space cop, one's a billionaire. But collaboratively, we all strive for the same thing. And we see Wonder Woman finds a book that washed up on shore when she was a child. And her mom calls her out for it, says, give me the book. Come on, you're not supposed to read that stuff. And she looks out at the ocean and says, what's out there? And then we cut to Aquaman saying, what's out there? As he looks to the ocean. And then young Hal Jordan looking up at the stars and saying, what's out there? And Superman looks at his rocket ship and says, is it out there? And then Batman looks out the window and says, he's out there. So, yeah, they all kind of have that sense of out there. We then cut over to the murder scene of Marina Black. And the whole Justice League is there, and the reason that they're looking at it is because Cyborg is able to feel when boob tubes open. It gives him like a bit of a migraine, and he's able to tell with a delay where it happened at. And so they come to this place, and it's like, yeah, she died 45 minutes ago. There's a weird feeling in the air. All the plants are dead. The milk is curdled. Like some bad juju was going on in this place. We also see that on the team currently is Shazam. Hal Jordan is back as Green Lantern, but we also have Jessica Cruz as Power Ring, who's kind of showing her the ropes. But of course, her ring is still very, very temperamental. So they get some DNA. They decide to analyze it. It's on the wine glass. It doesn't come back as anything human, so they know they're looking for something else there. We get a moment where Cyborg's like, hey, Shazam, you cool? You're awfully quiet, all things considered. And Shazam's like, I've never seen a dead body before. So then we cut over to LexCorp, where Superman and Lex, because Lex is still on the Justice League, are walking down the hallway, and they're talking about how Neutron, the bad guy from the last arc, was being brought here instead of Argus. And Lex is like, yeah, I got better security. Like, I don't need people looking over my shoulder and whatnot. And Superman's still just like, I don't trust you, man. And Captain Cold's backing up Lex, being like, no, seriously, he's a cool guy. He gave me a job. Trust him, Superman. And so they walk into Neutron's room, and he is just one big tumor. He just has super cancer, and there's nothing that any of the doctors are able to do. And Lex is like, that's tragic, but we need to wake him up so that we can talk to him. Like, it's kind of important. And Superman steps in, and he's like, well, if he's in that much pain, you can't wake him up. And Lex is like, hey, he's as good as dead. It's no big deal. And Superman goads him on, just being like, oh, Mr. Lex Luthor here, able to do all this science, business, and medicine stuff. Your team can't cure these guys, and neither will you, unless, of course, you can't do it, Lex. And Lex is like, oh, someone hold my hoops. I'm going to cure cancer. And Captain Cold's like, I can't believe I'm going to watch Lex cure cancer because Superman bet him that he couldn't. So we cut it back over to Mr. Miracle's plot. He is in the throne room of Darkseid. That's where he was breaking into, and he's trying to get whatever information he can. It seems to just be all the files on Justice League, but also this Marina Black woman, whoever she may be. And so Scott starts copying over the files, and then all of a sudden Darkseid shows up. And he says to Mr. Miracle, hey, why are you wearing those colors? And Miracle's like, what? And he's like, why are you wearing those? Those are the colors of New Genesis. Do you honestly think that you belong to them? No, you are just as much a slave on this planet as any other time. That planet, like, gave you up. They wanted nothing to do with you. They handed you over to me. And no matter how much you want to escape that, no matter how, quote, free you think you are, you will always be a slave. Also, I know about Barda, and how dare you take away one of my Furies from me. That will not go unpunished. And so he blasts some beams. Scott's dodging around it. And as Darkseid's about to crush him underneath his boot, he manages to grab his mother box and says, Mother Box, get me out of here. And so he teleports out. We then see that Cyborg has another migraine. Turns out that 3 other Marina Blacks have been killed across the United States. And he's like, well, that's not a coincidence. And he runs a scan. And he's like, there are 47 other Marina Blacks. We need to get all of them in protective custody immediately. And Flash goes and talks to Jessica. Jessica's like, hey, my ring's not talking to me. It's not whispering horrible things in my head. That's not usual for it. I wonder what it's planning. And as Flash is starting to be like, hey, don't worry about it, all of a sudden he freezes up. His mouth unhinges open, and a pair of hands start crawling out from it. And a big portal opens up, and it lets out this first woman named Grail. I don't think we get her name at this point, but it's Grail. It's easier to refer to her as such. And she's looking around, and she's like, okay, I'm going to hurt all of you. And she looks over at Batman and says, you don't even have any powers, but you might be the most dangerous of all. So I'm going to hurt you right now. And so she jumps over, does some fancy combat moves with her big old spiky knife thing, and she starts stabbing at Batman. Cyborg and Shazam. Cyborg's running a facial recognition thing. Shazam's like, okay, maybe like you work on that. I'm going to try to help. And so they blast at Grail. She senses the mother box in Cyborg and says, hey, give it to me. I want that mother box. But before that, we go over to Mr. Miracle, who teleported out of his sequence with Darkseid to the next murder scene of Marina Black. He meets up with Kanto and Lashina, and they start going after to attack him. We cut back over to the Justice League. They're still continuing to be attacked by Grail. Grail rips off Cyborg's outer shell to reveal that a lot of Cyborg's body has been growing back. And Shazam comments on it like, hey man, you still have a body. And he's like, don't worry about it. That's growing. I'll explain later. Can we please focus on the fight? But Shazam got distracted. He gets stabbed through the stomach by Grail. And as he's down on the ground, in comes Wonder Woman trying to end the fight. She calls over to Superman, who's still with Lex and Captain Cold. And she's like, hey, I got someone here. I don't know who it is. The lasso isn't working on her. And Grail's like, oh, you don't recognize me? I got Amazon blood in me. What? And so she starts firing off very similar looking beams to Darkseid, obviously, because Darkseid is her father. That's already been pre-established. And we see her coming in and attacking, just being like, oh, yeah, you're stronger without your gauntlets. And she blasts the gauntlets off of Wonder Woman and still manages to tackle her down to the ground. And as Argus starts moving, because by the way, Steve Trevor was there. I didn't even mention that. He was assisting the Justice League with keeping civilians out of their crime scene. Argus starts moving in, and Grail just blasts him. So back over in LexCorp, we see Superman's like, hey, we got to get over there. There's Lena Luthor there as well, the sister of Lex. And they're like, yeah, her comm just went down. Maybe you guys should get over to the West Coast. And we see Lex is like, hey, Superman, you might want to stand back. I'm going to put on my new armor, the Green Knight armor. It runs on kryptonite. And don't worry, it's not a personal slight at you. It's just a really good energy source that I really want to use to power an entire city with. But, oh, we can't have Superman not being able to go into the city. And Superman's just like, Lex, can you just please cut the crap for like 10 seconds here? I know you're still a bad guy. I don't care how many other people you convince. Like, Justice League's done with you. We don't need you. It was a good effort. Please get your pink slip on the way out. And Lex turns around, blasts him with some beam, and he's like, well, you're not exactly leader of the Justice League, so and he gets super angry that someone talked down to him in front of Lena. And then Lex gets shot multiple times from the back by Lena. And she's just like, well, don't think too much about it, Superman. Everyone hates him. So we go back over to Howell in the Justice League along with Power Ring. They're blasting at Grail. Grail tanks one of Howell's shots, being like, hey, wait a minute, that's willpower. Free will. I love dominating free will. And so she somehow blasts back the Green Lantern beam, and it causes his system to get corrupted. He does the same over to Power Ring, Jessica, and he's like, okay, Jessica, you're unconscious now, but you're the one I actually wanted here, because your ring holds a tether to another world, an evil world, and I want that. So she causes Jessica to start casting out horrific-looking shadow demon things or whatever. It starts opening up a portal in the sky, and we see in their cells back from Forever Evil, we have Ultraman and Superwoman, who are like, oh, he's coming, he's here, oh god, it's happening. As the portal opens up, out comes the Anti-Monitor, Mobius, who's credited as the Destroyer is here. So it turns out Lena also has a mother box, and she says, Mother Box sends Superman and my brother to their end for Darkseid. And so they get blasted away. Mr. Miracle, in the middle of his fight with Lashina and Kanto, he teleports away saying, hey, steal their next coordinates. Let's go to where they're going to go before they get there. And so everyone gets teleported. And the final sequence is Mr. Miracle ending up in front of a giant griffin that is being contained by someone else, and it turns out it is the actual honest true blue Marina Black, who says, hi, I'm Marina Black, I want to kill Darkseid, will you join me? So yeah, oversized issue, lot going on. Okay, so art A+, really like top tier on that. This is the first issue into the DC YOU era. where continuity is a lot less important. That being said, I don't know. I feel weird with the fact that Mr. Miracle specifically is just like, yeah, don't worry about literally any of my prior appearances up to this point. They did not happen. We're just going to go with what we had. Like, I'm a new character, essentially. That kind of feels weird to me. I can accept that, like, we didn't want to do this Superman depowered sort of stuff at this point. We wanted him to have his powers. I can go with Batman not being off either, replaced with Jim Gordon. Like, all of this is okay because it's a return to the status quo. But the status quo with Mr. Miracle is we know him. We know what he does. We know his character. And this isn't it. This is different. So I don't know. It's a little weird for me. I still think it's a good issue. I still think there's a lot going on here. I know that eventually Darkseid War is going to slog a little bit. That is without saying that it's good or bad. It's just going to happen. So it feels like this really fast pace at the beginning here is welcome, if only because I know how slow it's going to get later on. All that said, 8, that's about where I'm coming down at. And yeah. So begins the Darkseid War. Wonder Woman Annual #1 with 2 different stories, first of which is written by Meredith Finch and art by David Finch. So yeah, this is the finale of the arc that's been ongoing here. Last issue we had all of the male Themyscirians were killed or seemingly attacked by Donna Troy in the middle of the night, and then Wonder Woman was meeting up with this weird alien bug lady who said that the firstborn is the reason that all of this happened. So we pick up with that, and it turns out that, I mean, just paraphrasing like 3 different pages here, they were part of an alien race that crashed on this planet millions of years ago. They went into a stasis, and in the firstborn being thrown down at the end of Wonder Woman's story that one time, it woke them up. They realized that they were never going to be able to get off this planet, that rescue was not coming for them, and so they decided, well, then we're just going to take over this planet because we refuse to go down without a fight. So that's more or less how it plays out. And Wonder Woman's like, hey, hold on. You say that you're not going to be able to make it back to your planet, but like, do you understand how much time has passed here? And the alien queen's just like, hey, look, I recognize that you think that you might be able to do something here, but we're from a pretty superior race. You don't really have much you can offer us. And Wonder Woman's like, Superman's literally from outer space, man. And like, he can go back there. Like, we don't have issues with going to space. And she's like, oh, okay, yeah, what do you got? And so Cyborg steps up and starts like checking out his entire, the ship, like all of the internal systems. And he's like, yeah, I mean, it's old and it's like really, really dusty and whatnot, but it seems like it should be working. It's just fixing up the nuclear reactor, which is pretty standard. Yeah, we could totally get this thing running. And Wonder Woman's like, all right, so you cool? Can we just hook up your ship and then you leave? And it's just like, yeah, all right, we're cool. And Wonder Woman's like, great. And then we just end that story. We're just done with it. We never return. So we cut back over to Themyscira, and all of the male Themyscirians are dead. And she's standing amongst the bodies as, what's her name? The other one that's kind of friendly with her is just like, yeah, Donna Troy left with 20 of her best warriors. We didn't know what was happening until the fires happened, and by then it was too late. And Wonder Woman's like moved to tears of just like, I promised them that this could work, and they were betrayed, and I'm fed up with this world. So at that point, Dessa, that's the name of the lady, she's like, look, you know, we are warriors. We're not murderers. There was a reason that your mother traded them to Hephaestus instead of just killing them. This isn't the way we should do things. And she's like, you're right. The people who did this will face justice. That's what's going to happen. So she goes over to Themyscira, the throne room of the queen, busts in and says, Donna Troy, I'm going to kick your ass, along with all the other Amazons who did anything about this. And Donna's sitting up on the throne just being like, nah. They were going to overrun us. They were evil. You should not have allowed them here in the first place. I gave them what they deserved, which is death. And Wonder Woman's like, all right, look, you are so full of hate. It is disgusting. Like, it's consuming you. You have nothing left except for that. It's just too much. And Donna's like, all right, well, fight scene. So they start fighting against each other, just start throwing punches. Donna starts off saying like, oh, my hatred is like a fire and you're just fuel for it, you're adding to it. And then Wonder Woman starts punching back saying like, oh, you call yourself a perfect Amazon, but you're a coward and a bully. So they pull out swords and they start slashing at each other. Honestly, it's kind of just shouting philosophy of how they choose to live their thing. And mainly what Wonder Woman's come down to is Amazons are more than just warriors. They are sisters to each other, and they are sisters and like fighters for peace and virtue and blah, blah, blah. So stop doing stupid stuff is basically her thing. And what she ends up doing is getting a solid slash on Donna to the point where it lops off her arm. And she's like, you are nothing like the perfect Amazon if all you can see is this rage, hatred, and anger. And Donna just picks up her arm and just goes and just jams it right back on there. It looks kind of gooey, like clay to an extent. And Donna's like, oh, you say I'm not the perfect Amazon. Maybe it's time to change what perfect means. And Wonder Woman's like, what are you, man? So at that point, Donna leaps back in and says, oh, perfect is to be ruthless and merciless and strength. That's what it means to be perfect. And I will be perfect. And she's wielding the sword above Wonder Woman's head, seemingly end of the fight. But then Wonder Woman holds up her gauntlet and says, you know what? I feel sorry for you because you were literally made to hate. Like, it is in your nature. You cannot escape that. And that's tough. That's not fair to you. But I'm going to show you the truth. So she pulls out her lasso, wraps it around Donna, and says, all right, there's only one thing to describe what we are. We are sisters. Cheetah girls forever. So Donna Troy is catatonic, I guess I would say. Like, she just is reflecting on what she's saying. The fight ends, and she gets dragged out in front of the rest of the Amazons, and she's like, look, I wish I could go back and fix how you were made and stuff like that, but you're going to have to atone for the serious murderous crimes you've committed here. And we see the old crone-looking Amazon seeing her getting dragged out in front of the other Amazons. It's just like, oh no, this is impossible. Oh God. Yeah, how could she lose? So Wonder Woman goes in front of the Amazonians and says, hey, everyone who was on the side of Donna Troy, you're all treasonous bitches, and she's defeated, and I swear to God, anyone who committed murder against the boys is going to be severely punished, all right? And then she says basically the same thing she was saying to Donna, like, oh, this is what it means to be an Amazonian, a friend, and all that, blah, blah. You embrace everyone else. You do not fight against them. And we see the woman in the back, whose name is Daranoe. She pulls out a dagger and she's like, oh, you'll just betray us. You can't help yourself. It's in your nature. And she comes up on Wonder Woman. And then she's about to stab. She's suddenly hit by a completely separate sword. And we see it's one of the Amazons just standing in the group. And as she goes down, the Amazonian's like, you're right, this ends here, we have deceived ourselves too much. You have not done anything wrong, Wonder Woman. It is us who have done wrong to ourselves. And Wonder Woman says, and just like that, we're done. So we burn the bodies of the boys of Themyscira, gave them a proper funeral. All the people who were guilty of murder are now working with Hephaestus because he needs some help, I guess. And Donna Troy's up in one of the prisons on Mount Olympus. So that's that. And she says, and we will never know why Daranoe was such an evil bitch, but whatever. We have to at least try to move on from this. The end. But again, that is only one of the two stories in this issue. That particular one, though, I'd say probably earns at least 7. It's weird because it wraps up both plots so suddenly. Not that it didn't feel like they were, somewhat earned in that regard, but it's just like, and we're done. Like, just a single page where it's like, oh, have we tried this? Oh, no, we didn't. Okay, that's it. So I'd say 7. Art's very good, though. However, the backup story here is written by Meredith Finch, art by Goran Sudzuka, and it is, why is Daranoe such a bitch? So we open up with her as she's standing on the shores of Themyscira, and she's like, oh, look at me. I'm so old on an island where nobody ever ages. This is full of sacrifice and betrayal is my story. Let me tell you what it is. And we cut to centuries earlier where she's running through the woods with Hippolyta, and they are straight up lovers. There is literally no hiding that. And as they are about to start making out, all of a sudden there is a horn coming through the woods. And it's like, oh, hey, we got to go check that out. Your mom's the queen after all, Hippolyta. Let's go see what's going on. So they go. Apparently, there is a deal, a message, a group coming from from the Sparta people, and they are here to provide some sort of message to the queen. Her name is Alcippe, and we see the Spartans just like, oh, you look so beautiful and so amazing, my queen. So here's the deal. Sparta's being overrun by a witch demon named Hecate, and we just wanted to let you know because, like, she might be coming for you guys, and it's only fair that we tell you that, so we wanted to warn you. And she's like, we're the Amazons? Literally nothing can beat us, but, thanks anyway. Sounds cool. You want to go to a banquet now? And it's like, oh, of course, yes, totally fine. So they go out to a banquet, and they make a specific point of saying, yes, the king picked out not only this wine, but the chalice you drink from as well. And the queen says, here, to our Spartan guests. And she takes a sip, and it's poison, and she's immediately dead. Like, not even 10 seconds. So, cut to Hippolyta's now queen. She's taken the role from her mother, and her lover, Derinoe, is... By the way, she looks young. I don't even know if I mentioned that. She's young at this point. They're torturing the Spartan guy, saying like, why'd you do it? Why'd you kill my mom? And turns out it's because this is a deal they were making with Hecate in order to not have her destroy Sparta. Apparently this is just that kind of wiliness she's up to, and she's like, it was our only way she would leave Sparta. And it's like, okay, you could have just asked for our help. The Amazons could have easily kicked her ass, but no, you had to be all duplicitous, and now we're going to wage war on Sparta. That's just what we're going to do. So we see all the war planning goes in and saying like, yes, we're going to go in, we're going to attack Sparta, we'll rally the troops, go into daybreak. And as all the other generals go off, Derinoe is like, hey, Hippolyta, maybe we could revisit that part where they said an evil witch demon thing is attacking them, because that seems kind of important. And Hippolyta is basically like, no, he just made that up. Like, why would there be a witch demon thing attacking them? Clearly that was not an actual thing. It was all just a ruse for him to get to the banquet. Like, don't even worry about it. So at that point she's like, oh yes, my queen, I'm so sorry. And she recognizes her changing position with Hippolyta is now queen and servant rather than two lovers as it was before. But she sleeps outside of Hippolyta's tent that night. And all of a sudden, she sees a shadow figure sneaking into the place. And it's not even like a Spartan or anything. It's literally just a shadow figure with a lightning-shaped blade. And it's about to stab into Hippolyta as she sleeps. Derinoe sees it and takes hold of it, but it's got some deep, dark, evil magic attached to it. And by the time that Hippolyta manages to knock it out of Derinoe's hands, it has drained her of her youth, and she's now super old-looking. And she's like, oh, you're safe, that's all that matters. And Derinoe's internal monologue is like, yeah, I honestly believe that it was all for the sake of love, but like, we never allowed men on the island ever again after that. We went on the Spartan shores and we straight up killed a whole bunch of them, and we learned that we would not rely on the cowardice of men at any point. Hecate actually was a thing, but she just didn't really interfere with us either, and she left Sparta alone after a while, so that's neat, I guess. And then I got to sit around, and because I still had the immortality, but not the youth, I got to watch Hippolyta fall in love again and take other lovers, including Zeus, which was a man, and that's not cool with me, considering how they're the reason I lost my youth and stuff. So now when I see Wonder Woman standing on the edge of a cliff face, welcoming in all of the brothers of Themyscira, I'm pretty gosh darn pissed. And that's where it leaves off, saying, yes, she will drag us down further the road, and I'd know just the sorceress to call to deal with her. Leading back to Hecate. So, yeah. I like the backstory, but I'm confused as to why we put it here. I had no connection to this Derinoe character. Like, I barely even knew her name in the previous issues. I'm sure they said it, but, like, it wasn't frequent. And then they give me a backstory that actually makes her sympathetic and makes me care about her, but only after the entire arc is over. This strikes me as maybe something had to get reshuffled, maybe something had to get changed up, and this was originally supposed to go earlier. I genuinely don't know why they would tell the story that way. It is a disservice to the Derinoe character that, like, sure, you get this kind of twist at the end of like, oh man, I can't believe it. Like, it turns out she actually, like, was just betrayed by men all along, and that's why she has this deep-seated fear and, like, irrational hatred towards them. And, like, I like that. Do that earlier. Allow me to understand why the character's doing bad things instead of me writing her off the whole time as that old bitch. So yeah, it's a weird structure, but it's a good story. So I'm gonna say that one probably gets a 7 as well. It is a bit shorter. It's a little bit harder to like attach to things, and the art style is solid, but compared to the David Finch art prior to it, it stands out a lot. So I think a 7's the highest I can really go on that, but it is still well written. I just wish it was earlier in the story. But yeah, that's the annual. The Omega Men #1, written by Tom King, art by Barnaby Bagenda. So, opening up first with the DC sneak peek at the end of one of the Convergence issues, we basically have a 9-panel grid consistent sequence that is one of those videos from like terrorists, and we get an Omega symbol in the background being set up by some people, and then this big hooded figure drags in a chair and has someone with a bag over their head tied in the front, and he leans down and he's like, is that too tight? It seems like it's too tight. All right, let me just loosen up for you. Hey, don't worry about it, everything's gonna end. Praise Omega. So he walks off. The bagged figure just sits there in the chair. In walks this other man who we discover much later is named Primus. And he just basically starts delivering a monologue to the camera. And he's like, there is a cause and there is effect to everything. The initial cause, we all worship. We all, in all of our religions, including yours, worship as the Alpha. It's the thing that nothing else caused. It is the initial thing. And we all agree that that thing's cool and it's great and we all love it. However, in our religion, in our specific one down here, we worship a thing called the Omega, which is the final cause, the last thing, the thing that will result in nothing more, and it is also to be revered. It's finality, it is truth, it is the Omega. And you guys, the Citadel, and we established that all this takes place in the Vega systems, which in Green Lantern lore is not a place they go. So they say, oh, the Citadel came in and you kept on coming in, you wanted us to join you, but like we had to obey and abide by your rules, and we agreed to that because we wanted peace, and then you killed us. You killed us over and over and over again. And so I ask, is there an end to it? Is there an Omega to it? And so he takes the hood off of the baghead, and he says, this is Kyle Rayner. This is the White Lantern. He heard about the war and the fighting going on between the Citadel and the rest of us down here, and he wanted to come in and help. And you took away his ring, and I'm sure you didn't tell him about the dozens of others that were sent in here to help with their lies and their false promises. But here we are again. Will it ever end? And so he looks at the camera and says, I just want you to remember that you did this. And he calls in a guy named Tigor off screen, who grumbles saying, yeah, I'm coming. Kyle looks at the camera, says, hey, Carol, I might be home late. Just keep the light on for me. And he sheds a little tear. And in comes this giant, hulking, tiger-looking alien who says, like, all right, you may be the Alpha Empire, but we're the Omega Men. And he takes his claw to Kyle's throat, and we get some video distortion graininess as it all goes out to black. And that's the sneak peek alone. So, yeah, we go into issue 1, and we see some people reading some cards, and it sounds like they're trying to sound out the syllables to it. They're saying, like, where is Tigor? We will not hurt you. We are friends. And they're, like, reading it off, and we see they've got guns and stuff. It's a ship that comes in and lands on the planet Ojiptu, which is a world of pleasure, it says. We get a bunch of cuts to people in this Citadel, specifically this Viceroy character, but their speech bubbles only show specific words, such as Kyle Rayner, White Lantern, Omega Men, and Viceroy. So we see someone coming up and saying, the White Lantern, Tigor, all this stuff. And we see the Viceroy reaches over to a figure of a tiger statue on his desk, and he grips it tightly, saying something about Tigor, and we see that he has the White Lantern ring on his finger. So down at the Egyptu planet, there's this knock at the door. Old man opens it up, and then in comes the entire militia group, and they start beating the crap out of everyone while repeating the lines that they rehearsed of, "We will not hurt you. We are friends. We are friends." And as they get everybody like completely subjugated down on the ground, they say, "Where is Tigor?" And a hooded figure says, "Oh, in the next room, under the carpet, there's a door. It's in the hole." And one of the guys is just like, "Oh, you killed Lantern, Rainer, on TV, yes?" And they just repeat, "Under the carpet, under the door, there's a hole." So they go down in there, and then all of a sudden the door closes above them, and there is screaming. There is a lot of yelling and screaming. And the door opens back up, and we see one of them bloodied, dragged back down again, screaming. And the guy's like, "What's in the hole? What is in that hole right there?" He's like, "Oh, you were looking for the Omega Man, yes?" And we see out of it comes Tigor, covered in blood, and the voice says, "You found him." And as the one guy says, "How many are there?" the hooded figure unloads her own guns and says, "We are many." So fight's begun. We see them taking out a bunch of people. Eventually, one of the walls breaks in, and in comes this giant rock-like figure, the person at the beginning of the sneak peek, and he grabs him, starts like snapping necks, and they once again repeat, "We are friends, we are friends," probably not knowing what it means, but just saying, "Oh, say this when you're in trouble." We then cut to a sequence where you hear gunshots, screaming, praying to Alpha over and over again. One of the soldiers just sits down, takes off his mask, lights what I assume the space equivalent of a cigarette is, and as he goes and he hears that the trunk that he's sitting on is thumping, and he's like, "What?" And he opens it up, and we don't get to see what's inside, but he seems very happy. He yells out to his other guys like, "Hey, it's here, it's here." But then all of a sudden his head explodes, and standing there is Primus and a robot named Doc. And he's like, "Doc, could you check this guy out, see if he's actually dead? I don't know. I have no idea what to do it." And Doc's like, "His head exploded, so I'm willing to bet." And he's like, "Could you just check?" He's like, "Okay, fine, I'll check, whatever." So we cut back over to Tigor. He's completely taken out the entire room. There is one guy left who's got a gun trained on all of them, and they start splitting into 3 groups surrounding the guys. And Tigor's like, "Hey, you guys, did the Citadel ever give you guys a choice ever once in your life?" And he calls out to Brute, the big rock guy, and says like, "Did he ever give you a choice?" And Brute's like, "Nope." It's like, "Scraps, the small one with the guns, ever give you a choice?" And Scraps is like, "Nope." And he's like, "Wow, what a guess. Never gave me a choice either. So now you get to choose, soldier." And he says Alpha and then pulls the gun on himself and kills himself. And he's like, "Good choice." So we see that Scraps and all them come through the door. They give Primus a little bit of praise, saying, "Hey, you big old softy, you pacifist, you finally killed someone. Good on you. Now we're all Omega Men. Top marks." And Primus is like, "Oh, God, I really didn't want to do that. I had to, though." So he says, "All right, how long do we got?" And Tigor says, "Well, because I'm here, the Viceroy is going to make this personal, so we don't got too long." And they make sure that everybody that can get out of this building has been evacuated, as many as they could at least. And it's like, "All right, cool. The priority is the bomb. Let's go." And so they pick up the thing that was thumping before, and they start carrying it down the aisles. Throughout this entire issue, there's this recurring song that they sing to themselves. I can go through the lyrics, but I'm not going to sing it. It's, "O Lord, for you shall return, 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 and we shall burn, burn, burn. For we are the low, the cursed, the beggar, and you are the end, the curtain, the Omega." And we see as he's going down this hallway, he ends up accidentally dropping the box. Brute does, and it's a bomb, so they kind of are looking at it cautiously. We go back to the Viceroy. A bunch of his advisors are yelling and shouting over him, and eventually the Viceroy just says like, "Enough." And he says something, we can't understand what, and they salute, and then we see him say, "Tigor, the end is here," and he pops the head off the tiger figurine. So we go back to Egyptu. The giant ship that was hovering over top of them blasts a huge missile at the house, and it just straight up explodes. And we get a 9-panel grid of mostly black where they're saying, "Oh, hey, is the bomb safe? We got to check on it." And they're like, "Hold on, they can track our light. We can only turn on the light for a second to see." And so they flick it on for just a second, and we see the bomb, quote unquote, is actually Kyle Rayner. And he says, Carol, just mumbling to himself, and just like, hey, Lantern, don't worry about it. We are friends. We will not hurt you." So that's how it ends with that callback. All right, full disclosure, I love this book. I have read this book at least twice already. No, it's a good book. I don't really know how else to say it. It builds, it uses the space masterfully in terms of the 9-panel grid, the timing of everything. It's just really a fantastic book. I don't know what else to say about it. In terms of this specific issue, the idea that we can't understand the language of the other people except for some keywords, which allows the art to do a lot of storytelling, but then the keywords also give you the hints as to what the conversation is without even needing to know all of the words. You get this extra hint that there's something between the Viceroy and Tigor, whatever that's going to be. So, yeah, and then honestly, with the sneak peek going into this, like, you don't need the sneak peek, but it adds that little bit of extra oomph to it when you see, oh, he wasn't killed. He was actually kept alive. So, yeah, no, it's great. I'm trying to think if I want to give this, like, a 9.5 or where I'm at with it. I do know there are better issues of this book, but this one's pretty damn good. I'm gonna go with a 9. But that only leaves room for it to get better. So, yeah, definitely check it out. Do not wait on me to get to the rest of this book. Check it out if you haven't. Action Comics 41, written by Greg Pak, art by Aaron Kuder. But before we get into that, we have the DC sneak peek. So we open up at the Arctic tree line in Alaska. And prior to this, we've got Superman, because he's been using his solar flare, is kind of losing his powers over time. He doesn't have nearly as much as he did before. He's practically vulnerable. We see him riding some sort of vehicle up through the trees, and he's like, it's so cold. I'm not used to the cold. I can't feel my fingers. Like, this is crazy. And then all of a sudden, as he's going through the tree lines, there's a bunch of shadows that start coming up out of the ground, and they look like skeletons, and they just start attacking him on his snowmobile. And so he flips off, and he's like, I saw it coming, I just wasn't fast enough to react. But I can't fly, and they don't make any noise. It's absolutely surreal. And he starts fighting, and he's like, oh yes, I'm barely able to stand on my own here, but I'm still Superman. And he starts punching through him, and we see he's got the costume underneath. He's doing all that. By the way, the art style in this is black and white with just the red and yellow of the cape and the crest showing. So very muted color scheme. And he's like, I am barely holding it together here. Every muscle's on fire, but I'm giving it all I've got, and it's just enough. And he manages to beat through the shadows, and as he starts moving on again, snowmobile's ruined. He keeps walking up north, and he's like, it is so cold. And we see he's leaving a trail of blood behind him, and he's like, I'm fine. It's okay, I'm fine, but I am so happy I finally made it. And as he gets to the door of the Fortress of Solitude, he's like, okay, I get in there, and the central computer will tell me what's going on, and it'll fix me. And he knocks on the door, and it's like not responding. And he's like, hey, it's Kal-El, open up. And it says bioscan negative, but you do have stolen Kryptonian artifacts. So getting those back, and some tendrils start coming out and start zapping the nano armor, whatever you want to call it, off of him. The crest goes away. It rips the cape off of him and starts pulling that away, and Clark grabs hold of it, and he's like, my mother swaddled me in this when I was leaving. It's indestructible fabric. I ain't letting go of it. But he keeps on pulling back, saying, like, reclaiming. And he yells out no as the cape rips. And all he is left with standing outside the Fortress of Solitude is 2 tattered little corners of the cape. And he just yells out in anger, and his narration box says, I'm still Superman. And it gets quieter and quieter and quieter. So, beginning the issue proper, we see him coming back down from the fortress, and he's like, I can't fly. I can't leap over tall buildings. He's shirtless. He's hunched together. He's trying to keep some warmth. And he's like, we've been walking for days. I can barely breathe. I almost forget my own name, but I refuse to die. And finally, he finds himself stumbling across a main road, and he's like, I have never been so relieved to find asphalt. So he follows the road into town. He's somewhere in Alaska, and he's like, all right, it's 63 degrees in this store, and I'm going to stay here for as long as humanly possible. But as he goes through the clothing rack, he sees that there is a Superman t-shirt at a heavy discount, and he's like, oh, God, oh, geez, I don't know if this is right for me. And we see that there's a newspaper on the thing saying Superman's identity revealed. The kid looks at it and just like, hey, wait a minute. But he gets a different shirt. He pays for that and a burrito. And he walks out. The kid is just like, what? So as he leaves, starts eating the burrito, he sees that there is a motorcycle outside for sale. He starts talking to the guy. He's like, oh, hey, how much? And he's like, and like it's this big guy and then this little like crony next to him. And the crony's just like, don't mess this up, Paul. So he says, all right, how about $800? And he's like, you messed it up. You think this bum's going to have $800? And then Clark reaches down into his boot, pulls out a big wad of hundreds, and Paul's just like, the small guy, whatever his name is, he's like, it's $2,000. And he's just like, shut up, nah, 800. And he's like, yep, deal, here you go. And so he passes off the money. He takes a motorcycle, just goes right across the street to a motel, and he's like, and I will fall asleep for the next few days. However, the kid comes out of the convenience store and says, guys, that was Superman. That was him. It was him. And the small guy's just like, wait, what? Wait a minute. Holy crap, we got to go. And so the big guy comes over as Superman's trying to get to his room, and he's just like, hey, you think you can play us for chumps? Is that what you're doing here? You ain't so big now, are you? It's 2,000 now. And Superman's just like, we came to a price. We came to an agreement. And the small guy's like coming up behind him and be like, yeah, kick his ass. And then the big guy just like bumps him away. And Superman's like, hey, I don't like him either, but I'm not going to stand here and let you do that. And then all of a sudden, sneak attack from some other dude, hits him in the back of the head with like a lead pipe. And he's just like, it's true. He's weak now. We can totally kick Superman's ass. Let's do it. And so they all try to rush him, and Superman says, I don't think so. And he knocks them all away with one punch. And he's like, all right, I'm not proud of that, but it did feel good. And Superman rides off on his motorcycle saying, hell yeah. So we see he makes a cross-country trip. He basically just tries to lay low, doesn't really do much of anything. He actually has to eat now. He gets caffeine rushes. When it's raining outside, he stays inside. And eventually he gets a call from Jimmy. And he's like, I don't respond. Jimmy knows that they can track and all that. So if Jimmy calls 3 times within an hour, then I know that it's in trouble. And so I head back to Metropolis. And when he gets back to Metropolis, he immediately comes across a police barricade across the road saying, hey, this whole block is quarantined. You got to stay back, pal. But then they look at him and she's like, crap, you're actually wearing a Superman shirt. Bro, you're Superman. Freeze, get over here. And so they got him at gunpoint, and he's just like, what did I do? And they're like, shut up. You get off that bike. When all of a sudden the lead police guy gets a call in his ear from someone named Dawn Command. And it's like, hey, we know you have Clark. Let him through. And it's like, what? Are you serious? And he's just like, yeah, do it. So the police move aside. Clark goes through, and he's like, I know that a lot of cops like me because I saved their lives, but I also put a lot of them in danger. So clearly that guy has something against me. It feels personal. But he makes his way deeper into the town. And when he finally parks his bike, he comes across Jimmy. And Jimmy's just like, hey, I like the shirt. You're back to the t-shirt look. That's cool. And he's like, oh, yeah, sorry about leaking your identity. He's like, no, that wasn't you, Jimmy. Don't worry. I'm not blaming you. Anyway, they said there was a quarantine or something. What's up with that? And he's like, oh, yeah, everyone who lived in like 2 square blocks of you is being quarantined to make sure they don't have like space cooties or whatever from living around you. And Superman's like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of in my life. And it's like, yeah, no, it's just because they hate Superman, because everyone who grew up within 2 blocks of you loves Superman. And as they turn the corner, we see that they have turned this 2 blocks into, as Jimmy calls it, Kentville, with all these people who just love Superman and they're never going to turn on him. And so as they see Superman comes in, they're like, oh my God, it's him. And Jimmy's taking pictures. And like one woman gives him a street taco. Another woman's like, yeah, man, looking good. Wink. And Superman's like, oh, all right. I mean, that's all right with me. A bunch of kids come up and they're like, hey, Superman, you were living here this whole time? And it's like, yeah, no, totally. It's like, but you're not strong anymore, are you? And then he like is able to lift all the kids on his biceps. And we get this one woman saying like, all right, kids, let's give them a moment to breathe, get out of here. And so Clark introduced himself to her. Her name is Lee Lambert, the double L's. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're from the Fire Brigade, 202. And she's like, of course you know that. You're Superman. Why not? But as they're talking, he's just like, well, yeah, I grew up here, and it was a crappy neighborhood for a while, but it started getting better right around the time that you moved in. But, you've caused your share of issues here primarily by getting your cover blown, you know? Like, this is my home just as much as it was yours. You should know that this isn't a party for everyone. Like, yeah, there's people out here having fun and whatever, but there's also tons of people hiding scared in their apartments. So whatever it is that you're doing here, just make sure it's for the right reasons. And all of a sudden she gets a call. Something's going on down at the docks. And Clark's just like, what is it? I can help. And she's like, maybe let's just leave this for normal people. But he just grabs hold of the radio and says, nope, this is my home too. And he starts parkouring up on tops of trucks, across rooftops. And he's like, yeah, I can't fly, but I can still do this. So he makes his way over to the docks, and we see that there's a fire broken out. But the fire is caused by a shadow beast creature thing, like the ones he fought in the sneak peek. And so he busts out the little bits of cloth from his cape and he wraps it around his hands. And he's like, okay, this shadow thing followed me from the Arctic. They must be following me. This is the sort of trouble wherever I go. But he jumps in and he starts throwing punches. And all it takes is one super solid punch to the Shadow's face. And he's like, yep, I'm still Superman. So we cut back over to the cop, who is named Sergeant Binghampton. And Dawn Command's calling in saying, like, hey, do you have eyes on Superman? And he's like, yeah, he's down at the docks. He's fighting the shadow creature. And they're like, do you think he's going to be able to handle it? And he's like, I don't know. He's stronger than he thought, but he's still pretty weak. And so Dawn Command's like, cool, mobilize your troops. Time for us to move in. And we see all the troops are now moving in, not towards the shadow creature and Clark, but on Kentville. And they say, we've got a block to burn. So someone doesn't like that Superman still got good press. No, I'm impartial at this point to Superman being depowered. I'm a little bit closer to negative on him having his secret identity revealed, mainly just because, like, depowered, you have the ability to give it back pretty easily. That's not something that is really an issue. All he has to do is, like, oh, we threw him into the sun for like 20 minutes and he's fine. Like, that sort of thing, so be it. Him having his identity revealed is a harder genie to put back into the bottle, and frankly, I'm not a huge fan when they do it because it feels a bit too loosey-goosey with continuity for me. All that being said, this is a good issue. I like the sneak peek as well. I think they do a good job of getting this, like, just absolute through the ringer that Superman's been going through here. I think having a little bit of this town, like, super like him, I would have liked to see a bit more of him being downtrodden before we got to that, but, you know, we get to where we're going to get. Yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of, like, coming across as good, but not great for me yet. So I guess I'm at like a 7.5. Maybe it can go up from there. It's not bad by any means. I don't know. It feels like this is chapter 3 more than chapter 1. It feels like I should have gotten a bit more before this to get the status quo before we got to this point here. But, I mean, I'm still up for it. So we'll see where the story goes from here. Batman Beyond #1, written by Dan Jurgens, art by Bernard Chang. So picking up first with the sneak peek, I guess I should give a little bit of backstory for anyone who doesn't know what's going on with Batman Beyond. Future's End happened. Terry McGinnis came back to our quote-unquote present, died, and was replaced as Batman Beyond in an alternate dystopian future with Tim Drake, but like 5 years older than the Tim Drake you know. Okay? Got it? Cool. So we open up with Tim Drake in the Batsuit flying around. Turns out there's a big mechanical beast thing that is attacking some, I'd call them civilians, but we're in post-apocalyptic world, so survivors is probably a better term. And we see him talking with the AI in a suit that has the voice of Alfred. And Alfred's running all the calculations and whatnot, but it's kind of just to give him a voice, a back and forth of something he can bounce off on. So we see there are too many people around, so he has to go with some lower level explosives. He starts attacking the beast. He makes sure he times out at a perfect point to not injure anybody. However, we see one person named Peters is caught up in whatever technological explosion is there, and he ends up being infected with this mechanical virus. They do specifically say well, I guess they don't specifically say that it's Brother Eye. It's just a virus at this point, so it questions us whether or not that's it. But regardless, the beast is still standing. They still need to be able to move in closer. So Tim busts in, and the crowd is now like, wait a minute, hold on, that's Batman. What is Batman doing back? They didn't expect Batman here, and they're all happy to see him. So he goes in. He manages to use the suit's enhanced strength and some anti-armor grenades to be able to blow the heads off of this three-headed beast, and it's down for the count. So as they are landing, Tim in the suit, is a kid come up and says, way to go, Terry, you did it. And it's like, wait, Terry, I'm sorry, who are you, kid? And the kid's just like, what, don't you recognize me? It's me, Terry. It's your brother, Matt. And Tim's just like, oh, hey, how's it going? And he's like, where have you been? There have been rumors going around. And Tim's just like, all right, look, before we go any further here, I need you to know I'm not your brother, Terry. And he's like, wait, but who are you? Like, you're in his suit. Where's Terry? And he's like, I'm Tim Drake. Your brother, he's gone. He died. He was trying to fight against this. Yeah. And he's like, well, how did you get the suit? He's just like, and Alfred, as the AI, is just like, do you mind if I, go on speaker mode and just talk? And he's just like, yeah, please, Alfred, go for it. And he's just like, look, Master Matt, I know this is hard to understand, but Terry's no longer with us. He was friends with Master Drake here, and he turned it over as he was dying. And we get this other woman who steps up. Her name is Nora Boxer. And he's like, oh, and what about you, Mr. Drake? What's your story? I feel like we should know about this, someone who's close enough friends with Terry that he would hand over the suit in the meantime. And Tim's just like, I'm a long way from home, and that's all you need to know. And Alfred is like, yeah, don't tell them you're from the past. That's only going to complicate things. So he looks out and he's like, hey, we should all move on. That creature might have friends. We got to get out of here. And it's like, no. The whole reason we came out here is because that big pile over there is literally our gravesite. When they say when they were turned into Borgs, when they were pushed into that pit, it was all filmed into the body or filled with bodies, and that is where we now bury our dead. So that's what we're doing here. And he points out that there are still pockets of humanity being held captive, and they are trying to figure out how to save them. And Matt's like, hey, if Terry were alive, he'd find a way to save them. And Alfred's like, yeah, no, I think he's right, Master Tim. And he's like, all right, well, I guess that's what I'll do. I at least owe him that much. So into the issue proper, we go into the Wayne Powers complex in Neo Gotham. And we get a gang called the Jokers with a Z that have broken into this place, and they are getting what they came for, which is apparently something called the Veil. And it's not immediately clear what it is, but they say they have 30 seconds till it goes down. But as they take it out, in comes Batman, in comes Tim, and he starts attacking the Jokers. And he's just like, okay, hold on, wait a minute. We came here in order to take down, whatever crazy psycho terroristic threat in the future. And instead we're dealing with Jokers in cosplay? What is all this? And Alfred's just like, oh, they're a terroristic street gang. Don't underestimate them. And it turns out the thing they're stealing is called the Veil, which is whatever AI cloaking thing is attacking them. Again, they don't specifically say it's Brother Eye. It is being scrambled for all of Gotham to interrupt its system and therefore not think that Gotham is actually there. It's just basically cloaking tech for the AI. And so it's keeping Gotham safe, but this Joker's gang is taking out. And we find out that one of the members, she had her whole family was in New York, and she's like, New York had to go down. They all died. Why should Gotham get to live? I'm just evening out the playing field. Like, you're not allowed to be so privileged. And we see them take deterministic actions and make sure that Batman is taking them all out. He grabs hold of the little cube that holds the Veil stuff, and he's like, oh, is that true? Is that like an issue? Like, is that Gotham's the only place that's protected? And Alfred's like, I don't know. This is a different timeline than the one I left from. Things are all screwy. I'm still trying to figure out what's going on. So he puts the Veil system back in place. There's no way they're going to be able to be seen again. So it's like, okay, so Brother Eye left a trail of destruction everywhere but here. So maybe it is Brother Eye. Like, it's still up in the air a little bit, but it's like, well, let's just deal with whatever information we get. We need someone to talk to. So we see him flying across Gotham, and he's like, this is not the Gotham that I remember. Like, this is crazy lights, and like, we've built up ridiculously high. It's insane. But as they manage to get back to a building, he knocks on a window, and in comes Matt and Nora Boxer from the sneak peek. And Tim comes in just like, hey, yeah, things are crazy here. And she's like, yeah, we heard about the veil possibly going down, and it only got saved with like 2 seconds left. He's like, right, yep, that was me. The save was, not the... Anyway, so basically we get the long and short of it here, where Matt is, of course, being very emo and upset over the fact that his brother died, and he's not quite accepting Tim here. Nora's a little bit more open-minded, but she gives the rundown on, Matt stays with me because their father was murdered years ago. The mom went missing. We have no idea where she is. And Terry was always out being Batman. So I've essentially become the caretaker for Matt here. And Tim's just like, oh, yeah, that's fair enough. But Matt, he'd be proud of you for everything you did. You look just like him. So we get Nora, who is in whatever form of resistance there is. She says that there is a place pretty far away, just outside of New York, called the Lodge, which is a prisoner camp that is in a region that's super toxic, and so no person can get to it. But the bat suit probably would be able to handle that. So they say, yeah, if you want to go in there, that's what you need to do. And basically, Tim's like, why do we even have a prisoner camp? Like, why isn't the AI just killing everyone? And Nora points out it can read all of the hard disks and everything else, but it can't read somebody's mind. That's still beyond it. So we see him put back on the suit, and he's like, all right, I won't let you down. And as he flies off, Matt makes the point of saying, like, if I was with Terry when he died, I would have gotten this suit. It should be mine. So we see Tim is flying with Alfred, talking to him, and they say, yeah, the world got a lot more widespread destruction. Gotham was obliterated in that timeline, so things are significantly different here. I don't know what's going on in this particular world, but as they fly past New York, it's straight up Planet of the Apes. Like, Statue of Liberty is just like tilted over and like barely outside the water. Honestly, it looks a lot like, for DC continuity fans, The Great Disaster, things from the Earth 51 universe. But he's just like, yeah, no, I promised that I would try to prevent this timeline from happening. I blew it, so now I got to make up for as much as I can, at least. So he flies over, he finds the lodge, and as he starts zooming in to the people inside, all of a sudden he sees someone that is seemingly wearing a diamond-shaped crest, aka Superman. And he's like, wait a minute, what? And then all of a sudden he gets blasted from behind, and we see that it is the Brother Eye version of Superman with the spider legs and all that sort of stuff. And he's like, high value target marked for termination. So Tim's now fighting against Superman. And he's like, okay, so not everyone's been killed. Some of them have been turned, and I guess Superman is one of them. And as Superman catches up on Tim, he's like, all right, how do I fight Superman? What are we doing? And it's like, well, fight against his machine parts. And Alfred readies up an electrical shock in the suit. Tim activates it a little prematurely because he's running out of time, and in doing so, he manages to short circuit the Superman systems and allows Terry to crawl away from it. However, doing so has caused the bat suit to short circuit as well, so it starts retracting off his body, and he's like, well, hopefully it'll reboot on its own, but for right now, I can just blend into the rest of the prisoner camp. So he walks his way up, he's like, tries to look as much as he can like a prisoner. But the moment he gets in, everyone's like, you got food? You got food? Or how about technology? The only thing that can help us is tech. And immediately, Tim gets like into a chokehold, and they're just like, yeah, if you got any tech, give it here and we might be able to get us all out of this. And he's like, I don't have any tech, but get your damn hands off me. And at that point, a voice from the side says, hey, stop that. I know who that is. And we got a pink-haired girl who's like, what, you know this person? And she's like, yep. Max, I'd like to introduce you to Tim Drake, currently known, or more commonly known as Red Robin. And we see the voice speaking is none other than an older Barbara Gordon, who Tim immediately recognizes and is like, I'm sorry, what? So, all right. Okay. Future's End did not end well. I want to make that clear. Future's End was not a good book, and it did not end well. But there are things at the end of that book that were, like, directly a thing. He was with Mr. Terrific. He was with Madison, his girlfriend, who had firestorm powers for a while there. That should have been something that carried over into this, but it feels like we're just going to be like, no, don't worry about that. That's not important. Maybe we'll get to it. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it feels to me like we are going out of our way to say, we have Tim as Batman Beyond, forget the rest. None of that else matters. The fact that they're kind of dicey on whether or not Brother Eye is responsible for all this is even just half of it there. Like, they make reference to it. They say Brother Eye. It's definitely the Brother Eye version of Superman. But instead of, like, specifically saying it, they say, like, the virus or the AI or stuff like that. So maybe it's not as involved. I don't know. It just feels weird. I'm not used to the lack of continuity the DC YOU introduces, and it's just hard to get adjusted to. So I think I'm going to give this one... I'm going to give it a 6.5. It's not that it's horrible. It has room to improve. It's still mighty fine. I wasn't getting everything out of this that I was expecting to, and so I just have to adjust and understand what this book is giving to me on its own. So 6.5 for now. Green Lantern number 41, written by Robert Venditti, art by Billy Tan. First and foremost, we have the sneak peek at the beginning, though. So we open up at a way station, just some random space bar, where we get two space cops, not Green Lanterns, that are arguing about whether or not to go after this guy. One of them's just like, hey, look, he's not causing any trouble. He's just having a drink. Let's let him be. And the other guy's like, if one of our most wanted was in another galaxy or whatever, and they didn't get him, would you like that? No, we need to get to this guy because he's most wanted in their location. So let's go. So they kick in the door, and we see a bunch of people dancing, doing whatever. But sitting at the bar is very clearly Hal Jordan, trying to blend in. He's got like a hood and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, Hal Jordan, you're under arrest. And he's just like, hey, cop to cop, right? Like, can we just talk for a minute? And he's like, oh, no. Only one of us is a cop. You turned your back on that. And he's like, oh, hey, I'm just trying to enjoy my drink. And he's like, take off the glove. You're coming with me. And then we see the glove, which of course is a like glove of Krona or something like gauntlet of Krona, starts lighting up. And he manages to put a Green Lantern cuff around the cop, and he's got his gun ready. He says, don't. And then all of a sudden, hellfire. Like, everybody starts shooting. Green Lantern manages to tell everyone to get down as he pulls the cop with him, starts making constructs to get down onto the lower floors, and then flies his way out of the space station. And the other cop's like, I told him not to go in. I told him just to let him be, but no. So we cut to later aboard a cruiser called the Darlene, where we see the cop is being held, like, still in the cuffs, but now chained to the table. And he's just like, what, I'm a hostage now? Is that your big scheme or whatever? You're already wanted for stealing that gauntlet from the vault and God knows how many other crimes, Hal. And Hal's just like, could you give it a rest? Here, put this on. And he hands the guy a sling because in all the commotion, he got his arm dislocated. So Hal just hands him a sling, and Hal's just like, you have a family, man? And he's like, yeah, I got a mate and some kids. What about it? He's going to feel worse about breaking my arm now? And he's like, yeah, no, a family at home, but you put your life at risk because you know that that's the choice you made. Like, you know that that's what you have to do. I've got people I care about too, and if I'm going to see them again, I mean, that was the choice I made. That's the issue I made. So whatever you've heard about me, just know that you are not the only cop who's going to sacrifice everything for the sake of the job. And so he gets the guy up on his feet and says, like, all right, let's go. And he leads him over to an airlock, and he's like, all right, what are we doing here? You're going to toss me out? Now hands him a beacon and says, take this. Once I'm out of the sector, I will let your people know where to come to get you. And he's like, what, you're letting me go? I'm not a hostage? And he's like, what, you thought I was going to kill you? No, man. The universe needs more guys like us, some more hired guns. And we see him push him out the airlock in a suit, so he's totally safe, lights the beacon, and then the ship takes off. that's the sneak peek. So we go into the actual issue, and we have a betting ring around a gladiatorial arena. And the narration is basically saying, like, this is where all the dark corners come to meet. It's all about money. Everything is able to be bet on. And as the betting closes for whether or not this dude is going to survive, we cut over to the gladiatorial ring where a giant rancor-looking beast comes out. And there's this very proper-looking blue enrobed figure in the middle of the arena. And we see in the audience watching is clearly Hal Jordan. And everyone's just like, oh, yeah, this rich boy has self-defense class and all that. I bet he'll last at least half a round. And everyone's like, oh, I'll take that bet. He ain't lasting nearly that long. So the figure just takes off his robe and says, you will not sully my robe. Go ahead, finish it. And then as the robe hits the ground, seemingly the guy is dead. But wouldn't you know it, all of a sudden on his hand appears a green construct sword. And it stabs through the beast and he survives. And everyone's like, wait a minute, hold on. He didn't come in with that sword. This is rigged. And everyone starts blaming the house, saying that they rigged the game and no bet, no bet. And you see Hal just smirk a little bit. He's just like, ha, ha, ha. So everyone starts running, trying to run for their money. And we cut to an intermission where the guy's back in his cell, and Hal comes up and he's like, you got pretty lucky today. And he's like, luck? There's no luck here. I'm in this cesspit. But if you lost your money, that's not on me. Go to the house. And he's like, no, I don't gamble. So he pulls out Cronin's glove and says, like, and we all know you didn't pull that sword out. So he unlocks the cell. And the blue guy's like, wait a minute, hold on. Who sent you? Did my uncle send you? And he's like, does it matter who sent me? I just saved your life. You were almost the crap pile on the floor out there. But as he's saying all this, in comes three mercenary-looking dudes that say, oh, well, all that matters is that you guys are staying. And we see this one guy named Trapper is like the leader, along with the two other ones. And he's like, oh, Hal Jordan, I can get myself a pretty penny for you. You were once whispered in every den of this sector, but you were the Green Lantern. Nowadays, you're a good bounty. So at that point, Hal pulls out the gauntlet and says, like, oh, you've heard whispers about me. Well, didn't the whispers warn you? And so he unleashes a big construct of a squid and starts attacking these guys. And he's like, yeah, you want to see people getting fed to monsters? This is one of the monsters from my world. And the guys are like, oh, I want to go home. So the two goons get knocked out, and that just leaves us with the main guy, Trapper. And he's like, oh, how far are you going to get? You're a wanted man. He's like, far enough to get you into a cell for trial. You're the real reason I'm here. So he says, yeah, I can drop you off where I know the Green Lantern Corps will find you, even if I'm personally persona non grata with them right now. I'll testify against you for abduction and trading on the blood market, because you're putting my blue boy here up in the cell. So at that point, he says, hey, I've got a secret for you. And he whispers something to Hal. And Hal says, bull. And he's just like, oh, well, when's the last time you saw one of them? It's been a while, I take it. So in comes the rest of the guards and stuff like that. Hal's like, all right, change of plans. So he knocks out Trapper, grabs hold of him, takes the blue guy with him, and they start making their way out. But there is no way they're going to be able to make it through all the guards and all that. So Hal goes out to the gladiatorial pit, yanks off all the doors that were containing these monsters. And as the monsters come out, they're all in chains. They're not able to do anything. So Hal makes a chainsaw and starts cutting all the chains off. So now it's absolute mayhem, pandemonium. And he's like, well, it's hard to be chased if you're being chased yourself. So let's go ahead and get out of here. And so the blue guy and Trapper all make their way out on a light cycle. And as they make their way back to the Darlene, we see the Darlene actually has an AI voice to it. And the blue guy's just like, what is that? By the way, his name is Virgo. I may not remember that. I don't know if it'll be important. Virgo's like, who is that? And Darlene apparently is sassy because she previously had a abusive, what's the exact word they use for it? Trafficker as like the pilot of the ship. And he's just like, I may not be as forward thinking as the trafficker, but I will treat you better, Darlene. So let's tone it down a little bit. So at that point, they fly off into space. We see Trappers in the cell, and they're flying somewhere. Hal's like, good morning. And Darlene's just like, actually, by the 24-hour scheme you told me about, it's actually evening right now. And Hal's just like, it's an expression, Darlene. Please, just let me have this. So Trapper tries to negotiate out his freedom, and Hal's just like, no, it's not going to work on me. I'm not that kind of crook. And as he sits back in the cell, he's just like, oh, Virgo, you may notice that we're not going back directly towards your planet like Hal would have promised you. We're taking a little detour because I told Hal about something that he's going to want to see. And then the Glove of Krona just whips out a thing to grab him and pull him against the bars, like starts hitting him a little bit. And Virgo's like, he's already in prison, man. Why are you hitting him? He's like, nah, the glove isn't exactly as finely tuned as a ring. Sometimes it just taps into my more innermost desires. I have no control over that. And Trapper's just like, yeah, must be why the court put a warrant out for him for stealing the glove. God only knows what else he would have done. Of course, none of that would be the problem if Hal just listened to what I was saying, and then he gets grabbed again, and Hal's like, all right, I meant to do that one. So at that point, he's like, I just can't figure it out. Of all people, how could you have not heard? But I understand it now. I run in circles. I have people to talk to, and that's how I first heard it. You don't have anyone. You're all by yourself. And where's that gotten you? And he's just like, well, I'm on this side of the cell, so it's gotten me that much at least. And then all of a sudden, they get hit by an asteroid. It's not a big deal, but Darlene chimes up saying, like, hey, if you're going to take my autopilot off, could you at least, I don't know, pay attention to where you're going? And as they make their way out, Virgo says, oh, it appears, according to the map, that we've gotten to Sector 0. And Hal says, what? No, that can't be right. This is the headquarters of the Green Lantern Corps. It's a freaking planet. And Trapper smirks, and he's like, oh, listening to me now? And Virgo's like, what's up? And Hal looks out the window and he says, the Green Lantern Corps isn't here anymore. The entire Green Lantern Corps is gone. And we just see a husk of a planet just floating in the middle of nowhere with nothing on it whatsoever. So, yeah, that's it. That's the issue. All right, top to bottom here. I think the sneak peek is a good characterization, bad for plot. I don't think it really gives a good idea as to like what we're doing with Hal, but I'm okay with it from the point of, okay, he's just generally a renegade, which by the name of the trade should be obvious here. In terms of the issue itself, I'm torn because if the plot of the book is going to be Hal trying to figure out what happened to the Green Lantern Corps, then the renegade part feels worthless. Like, it feels like we're not doing anything with that. If we're focusing more on the renegade stuff, then it's kind of a question of, why do we care if the Green Lantern Corps is gone? It's kind of that same sort of thing with Guy Gardner when he joined the Red Lanterns. Like, if you want to get involved with the Green Lantern stuff, you have to make it worth it to him as a Red Lantern. If we want Hal to be involved in the ongoings of, okay, the Green Lantern Corps is gone, then you have to make it worth to him as a renegade. And I'm not quite sure I've gotten that yet. But it's issue 1 of this specific arc, at least. I am willing to say that they might work it into being something. It's just that this particular one kind of felt like two separate pieces. We got the guy who's out on the seedier sides, working as basically a muscle for hire, mercenary kind of guy, bounty hunter, I guess. And then the opposite side, which is what happened to the Green Lantern Corps. And they just don't quite feel like they've meshed well enough yet. I'll give this one a flat 7. Hope for better next month and see what else we have in store. Bat-Mite number 1, written by Dan Jurgens, art by Corin Howell. So, yeah, opening up, we got the sneak peek to begin with in Gotham City. We've got generic-ass burglar guys who have percent signs on their outfits, and as they're running out, all of a sudden Batman comes in, starts kicking their faces in, and as they are standing there, they say, haha, you think you got us, but we play the percentages. We're ready for anything. And we see up on a nearby rooftop is another one of them with a rocket launcher aimed directly at Batman. And then as he says, we're ready for everything, he says, cue music. Someone else off panel says that. And in comes Bat-Mite singing the theme song to Batman 66 with the na-na-na-na-nas and everything. And he kicks the guy in the face. And Batman and them look like the other crooks look up to the thing and just being like, what? Who is that? One of them says, we must have ran out of Robins. So as Bat-Mite's like winding up a punch ready to go, Batman says, hey, disarm him first. That thing has a hair trigger. But before he can get off hair trigger, Bat-Mite throws the punch. Rocket launcher goes off, ends up hitting the building, and Batman has to get the two crooks out of the way to try to protect them and not let them get killed. So as Bat-Mite's reacting to that, all of a sudden the crook says, like, all right, just because we didn't expect you bat dwarf, doesn't mean we can't deal with you. And he shoots Bat-Mite, and Bat-Mite goes, oh, you got me. Everything's going dark. Goodbye, cruel world. And he just flumps down to the ground. Batman has got up to the top of the building, and he says, hang on, kid, I'll get you to a hospital. And he knocks out the other crook, and then all the Bat-Mite is just like, did you just call me kid? I sing with a baritone. I've got a bass bumping in my head. Maybe it's a tenor. I don't know the difference. And Batman's like, what is going on right now? What is happening? He says, like, oh, well, you know, apparently it explains your anger issues. Have you considered therapy? And then he starts going on like a Deadpool thing where he's like, oh, meta-analysts say that you should probably smile more, crack a little jokes or whatever. And Batman's like, you could have gotten those men killed. That office was destroyed because of you. And he's like, destroyed? It's all part of my plan. And he says, yeah, you've got all these Robins and Batgirls and Batcows and whatnot, but if not for me, then all of these stock certificates, and he gets the briefcases that were being held by the bad guys, all these stock certificates would have burned up in the safe. But my plan allowed them to get out of the building entirely before it was caught on fire. And Batman's like, the building wouldn't have been destroyed if it wasn't for you, though. And he's like, oh, yeah, I get it. You don't want to share credit. So be it. But I say again, therapy. And Batman's like, what are you? And he's like, oh, I'm your secret weapon. I can help. I can help you be better. And Batman's like, no, never, go away. And he's just like, oh, yeah, no, I get it. You make a good point. The others are who we should be worried about. The other ones need fixing. And so he teleports out and says some of them need some major repair jobs too. And he teleports to seemingly Times Square as he looks up at all the billboards covered in other superheroes and says, I'm just the guy to do it. So this issue 1 proper, begins with Bat-Mite in chains being chewed out by some sort of council saying, oh, now you've done it. You crossed the line. We're going to punish you. And like part of the council's like, oh, it's death. Death is the only punishment. That's the only way. Make it a slow death. And the main council guy's like, guys, can we chill a little bit with the death stuff? No, that's not what we're doing. He's like, please, I didn't mean to. I just can't help myself. And just like, no. We're going to go ahead. We're going to do this. The choice is exile. And he's like, no, please. I have a family. Anything but that. But all of a sudden he starts getting teleported out, and he's just like, oh, I beg you, reconsider, how will I survive? And they're like, no, you'll thrive. So he gets teleported out, and they say, finally, we got rid of him. He's someone else's problem now. Cut to the present. Batmobile's chasing after some robbers that are dressed as surgeons. I don't think it matters. And as they are shooting back at the Batmobile, we see that it's not Batman driving, it's Bat-Mite, who is criticizing how there's no explosive options, like a Bat-Zooka or Bat-Pedos, and he questions why there aren't Bat lasers. So we come up on a sharp turn. The robbers manage to make it, but the Batmobile, not paying enough attention because he's just flooring it, goes off the edge, and he's like, where are the Bat retro rockets or the Bat chutes? Oh, we should always have Bat chutes. And so he has to teleport out of there. The Batmobile crashes into the water in a huge explosion, and Bat-Mite is now out. Now wearing a black and gray outfit instead of blue to match current Batman continuity. So the surgeon robbers are like, yeah, we did it. We killed Batman. And then standing in the road in front of them is, of course, the real Batman, who throws in a little bat grenade, blows up the front of the car, causes them to crash. They get out ready for a fight, and Batman just takes one of them out immediately. The other one goes to the trunk and holds the gun to it, says, if you come near me, I'm going to fire in there and kill her. And so Batman throws a batarang, knocks him out. And in comes Bat-Mite saying, whoa. You just put the safety of whoever was in that trunk on a batarang, a toy from Kangaroo Land? What is wrong with you? And Batman's like, I thought I told you if I ever saw you again. And he's just like, yeah, it's me, it's Bat-Mite, and I'm here to help you be better. So they open up the trunk, and Batman's like, oh, by the way, I may have crashed your car. I just wanted to take it out for a spin. You can afford it, what with being a 1%er and all. So they open up the trunk, and inside is a girl who's just super happy, and she's like, oh, thank you so much, And so Batman gets her out, says that they sprayed her with some sort of gas. And Batman's like, oh, hold on, wait a minute. This is a perfect opportunity to rehab your image. And so he pulls out his phone, tries to take a selfie with Batman and the girl, and he's just like, all right, say Joker, grin on 3. And so he tries to do it, but Batman's already up into the bat plane by the time the picture goes off. And he's like, oh, yeah, I guess that explains how you got there. I'm going to have to take that out for a spin too. And then all of a sudden, this random nurse lady comes up out of nowhere and says, "Oh my God, I'm so happy that you saved her." And Bat-Mite goes full Animaniacs with a "hello nurse." And she's like, "Oh, you're my absolute hero. Here, let me thank you." And she reaches into her purse, and Bat-Mite's like, "Oh, please, I have to decline payment. This is all part of the job." And then all of a sudden, she sprays Bat-Mite with whatever it was and says, "You ruined everything. How dare you?" And as Bat-Mite falls to the ground, gasped by whatever that was, the nurse pops on the phone and says, "Hey, Batman took her. He's got some weird sidekick. I got the sidekick now. Should I kill him?" And the voice says, No, bring him to me." So we cut over to some manor up on a rooftop. As Bat-Mite gets water poured on his face, he starts waking up, and he's like, "Oh, who do I look like? Aquamite?" And he's still into the nurse. He's just like, "Oh, if you wanted to take me home, all you had to do was tell me." And he's like, "Yeah, not my call." And then all of a sudden, there's a voice-off panel, and we see a much older-looking nurse. The best way I can describe is it looks like Yzma from Emperor's New Groove. And she says, "My name is Dr. Trauma, or so my patients call me." And Batman's like, "Well, with a name like that, I'm willing to bet that it fits the name." And she's like, "You intrigue me, little thing. You can fly. Very interesting. Your diminutive body is not great, but, you know, the flight adds points." And Batman's like, "Hey, yeah, no, I'm totally worthwhile. Also, what are we talking about?" And he goes over to the fireplace nearby and picks up a mace, and he's like, "This is weird. What's your guys' story? Where's the rest of the Frankensteins?" And she's like, "Don't you compare me to that oaf, that nitwit, that half-job." And the nurse is like, "Yeah, how dare you make fun of one of the most accomplished plastic surgeons of all times?" And Batman's like, "Oh, wait, this is the Dr. Trauma? The very same Dr. Trauma that I've never heard of?" And Trauma then explains to her thing that, look, the whole point of her thing is that she takes young, beautiful bodies that have people brains in them, and then takes old people's bodies that can afford it and swaps their brains. That's her thing. And so she's like, "Yeah, that's my whole thing." And Bat-Mite puts the pieces together and just being like, "Oh my God, you're serious?" And she's like, "Indeed." And she pulls a lever to activate a trapdoor, but of course Bat-Mite can fly, and he's like, "I mean, I gotta give you props. The trapdoor's nice and all, but if you're gonna do something, really commit. Like, try to shoot me or stab me or something, to poison me with a glass of poisoned wine." And then the nurse just comes with more gas and says, "Perfect." So he goes down to the trapdoor. When he comes to, he's being put into a nearby cell. Well, he's being walked down a line of cells. I don't know how he goes along with it, but the nurse is just like, "Oh yeah, how old do you think I am?" And she's like, 22, 24 tops. And he's like, "I'm 97. He's like, "I'm willing to bet you underwent the procedure." And she's like, "Yeah, of course." So as they go down the line of cells, we see there are some young, handsome men being kept inside of a cell. They're victims in waiting. And Batman's like, "Oh, I wasn't buying this before, but it's true." And he sees all the tables and tools and whatnot that are used to do it, and it's like, "You are brain robbers." And so Bat-Mite gets dragged into one of the cells and just like, "Oh yes, we put the brains from the young into the old bodies as well after we're done." And it's like, "That's a fate worse than death." And he's like, "Yep, and you will get to share a cell with Dr. Trauma's greatest treasure, the ultimate prize. And maybe one day somebody will be cheap enough to want your body, but we'll see what happens there." And Batman's like, "Hey, what do you mean? I got feelings here." But as he looks up at who else he's sharing a cell with, turns out it's Hawkman. Hawkman has been captured, and Batman's like, "Well, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. You, compared to something like Batman, you are pretty easy pickings." But he tries to free Hawkman from his chains. He reaches into his utility belt and pulls out a bat laser, starts cutting through them. And Dr. Trauma's like, "Oh, it's no use. He's drugged. His brain is in the process of shutting down. Soon I will remove it. And I was going to put my brain into that young girl's body that Batman took away. But now I'll just have to put it into Hawkman's body. And he will take over mine. Wahaha." And that's the issue. Okay, it feels weird. I don't know how best to describe it. Like, it feels like it's just trying to straddle that line of Harley Quinn, Deadpool kind of meta, just talking to the audience and like doing all the wink wink nudge nudges, but also still playing it serious where it doesn't feel like Bat-Mite's actually talking to the audience at all. It feels like he's always in the scene, and maybe he's just really weird like that. Like, I don't know. And I don't really get a grip on what his thing is. It seems like writing-wise, what we're going for is this idea that he is trying to improve superhero images. He's trying to make superheroes better. And so he's coming after, Batman, obviously, and saying like, oh, if you did this, if you did that, then that would be a thing that would improve your image. And he goes after Hawkman at the end here and kind of says the same thing, but nothing about this plot strikes me as, yeah, we're working on your image here. It's just a brain switch. I don't understand what the relation is. Maybe we'll get more of it, but it's a weird feeling comic. Art-wise, it's also very cartoony, very manga-esque in times. I don't know how best to describe it beyond that. So it stands out. It's definitely emblematic of the DCYOU, where we're just trying different things and letting a type of comic exist for everybody. But this particular one, I'm not sure who it's for, because it almost feels like a kid's comic, but it's got just enough weird sexualization in places where it's like, is it though? So yeah, I'm going to say... this one's honestly like a 6 for me. It's just not for me. Maybe it works for someone else, but I don't see what it's going for yet. Nah. Lobo number 7, written by Cullen, Bunn, art by Cliff Richards. So before we get to the issue proper, we have the sneak peek, which is somewhere in some space place where we get Lobo just absolutely going at it with some space alien woman. And he said that the target's name is Cyrus Ursivus, who is a Viscount of Valco Multiversal. Hell of a name there. But we see as he's getting into it with the woman, he reveals that this megacorp that turned into a religious order, that turned to a criminal organization, Cyrus is one of the highest ups in this place, and as such, he is an assassin, and he's got a ton of crimes listed under his thing. Cyrus is impossibly hard to track. However, Lobo correctly figured out that the one thing Cyrus would be keeping track of is his wife. And so Lobo decided to go in through that method. And as Cyrus is sneaking into the window, knife drawn, ready to attack Lobo, Lobo shows that that is actually a gun in his pocket and aims it up at Cyrus while in bed with the wife still. And he's like, hey, sorry I kind of used you, but yeah, of course your husband was keeping tabs on you. You thought he just didn't care. And we see that he's ready to fight against Cyrus, but ultimately he just takes out his knife and immediately slits the guy's throat. Like, not even a fight scene happened. And the woman in bed is just like, you used me. And he's like, yeah, several times, in fact. But what's got you upset about that? Because you knew this, but like, you're upset at me even though your husband's dead on the floor. And she's like, oh, well, he was a very cruel man. And he's like, oh, well, if you think I'm the same way, baby, you may as well cut out my heart right now. And he gives her a kiss. And then the bodyguards come in. They're like, what's going on here? And Lobo's like, if I gave her about a minute, maybe she could have talked the bodyguards down, considering that they are her bodyguards. But this was more fun. And so he starts attacking them with these glowing knives that just immediately disintegrate the body that they touch. And he just starts going through each of them. There's one left that manages to tackle him out of a window. Lobo manages to stab the knife into them as they're falling, and then he lands on a car and says, all right, set this thing down now. So he leaves the woman behind and says, like, yeah, well, you know, she's going to have to take the fall for this. No one's going to believe that she didn't murder her husband, and nobody else saw me there. So maybe one day while she's sitting in jail, if she ever learns to forgive me, she'll look fondly on the time that we were together and realize that it was just simply business. And as he says all this to us as the audience, we see that he pulls up a new bounty for Sinestro that is worth 1 billion credits, kill only. So that's the sneak peek. We go into the issue itself, and wouldn't you know it, Lobo just got done sexing up a two-headed blue alien lady. And they're like, oh, are you going somewhere, Mr. Lobo? And he's like, yeah, just going to get some fresh air, keep the bed warm. So we see we're in some sort of a club, a dance thing or whatever. And we got this guy coming in named Varnu Vane, who's got bodyguards on either side. And he's owns this place. He's got a get-rich-quick scheme and all this sort of stuff, and he's just looking to be rich. And as he's going into this back room for VIPs, we see Lobo's already there, having killed most of his bodyguards that were sitting there waiting. There's two women off in the corner just huddled together, and he's just like, oh, hey, I was hoping we could have a civil conversation back here without all the music out there. And Varney's just like, you made a mistake coming here, my bodyguards. And then they immediately just bolt. They're just out the door. And Lobo's like, you're who? So he gets up, he starts threatening Varnu, and he's just like, all right, look, they're smart because they managed to get out of here, and it gives us a little more privacy to chat. And the ladies are like, hey, we haven't been paid yet. And he's like, we'll get to your professional concerns in a moment, but right now I need to talk to this guy. And he basically asks about, all right, what do you know? And he's like, look, it's true. I worked on geological surveys on both Earth and Zarnia, and the contracts were all anonymous. I swear to you, I never... And all of a sudden his head explodes. Turns out it was a bullet from inside the dance club that came through the wall, and it's immediately followed by a hail of other bullets. And we see a huge group of ninja, assassin whatevers. They start coming in, they start attacking Lobo, and he's just like, oh, thank God, I was starting to get bored. So he starts going after all of them. And Lobo explains, yeah, that guy did a survey on Zarnia. I'm trying to figure out who is responsible for Zarnia's death, because I always thought it was me, and I still believe it's me, but now I'm hearing that somebody might have been pulling my strings, and therefore I deserve to know who that is and get my cut of the bounty or whatever it may have been. So as they're going through, just slicing through people, we see eventually he gets down. There's one guy just like begging, like, no, as he crushes a huge machine down on him. And Lobo's looking away, and one guy is just like, all right, I'll tell you anything you want to know. And Lobo just shoots his brains out and says, all right, is anybody willing to talk? Nobody? No? So we cut back out later. It seems he returns to his bedroom where the ladies were, and as he gets back there, he knows exactly what's going to happen. But I do want to make a point in the comment. He says, this city is the kind of place where a man like myself could grow old. Not that I'll ever grow bulked up and hairy. Wink, wink to the audience there. But when he gets back to the room, turns out the girls have sold him out. All those ninja assassin people are still here. And he's like, oh, well, it's about time. I was starting to worry that you two were developing real feelings for me and wouldn't just drop credits to try to get me killed. And they're like, oh, we would never. And then a voice off to the side says, oh, please forgive me. The delay was entirely my fault. And we see that is a woman named Kadra. She represents a group called the Void Whisper, who Lobo apparently has heard of. It is a very exclusive guild for top-level assassins. And Lobo's like, yeah, I'm wondering why you've never tried to call me before. And he's like, well, recently you've been getting jobs from somebody else named Riala. I don't poach talent, but now it seems that you're a free agent, so you want to hear the sales pitch? And he's like, no, not at all. Just tell me what I need to know. And she's like, oh, but everyone wants to hear what I have to offer. And so she apparently makes the point of saying, we were the ones who fenced the assassins to try to take out Earth, all of those massive people. And he's just like, yeah, and I killed all of them. So what does that say about your best of the best? And she's like, no, fair enough. And we want to offer you up the opportunity to make good for all the men and women that you butchered. And he's just like, no, again, don't want the sales pitch. Just tell me what you know. And she's like, oh, well, if you're not interested in Earth, I do know you're interested in what happened to Zarnia, and if we're willing to cooperate together, we might just be able to get the answers. See, working together, we can get whoever that player is to reveal themselves, and then we can decide how to deal with them. And Lobo's like, all right, I don't have anything else better going on. So he looks over at the two-headed blue alien lady and just like, hey, it's cool. Don't worry about it. Everyone's playing everybody. Don't. And so he goes over, kisses one of them, and says it was fun while it lasted, and then leaves the room. And they smile for a second like, oh, what a nice guy. And then all of a sudden one of them starts freaking out, realizes she has an explosive on her tongue now, and her head explodes. So yeah, we then see Lobo talking to, I've already forgotten her name, Kadra. And Kadra's just like, yeah, all right. Here's the deal of how this is going to work between us. You are going to be my whip. You're going to go out and you are going to take out high-value targets, and you're going to keep the rest of the guild in line. Anybody steps out of line, you're in charge of putting them back in place for the Void Whisper. And if you do your job well, then, I mean, it's all going to work out for you. And he's just like, look, I already told you, I don't care about all that. Just point me in a direction, and I'll do what needs to be done. So we see he gets to some random planet. And like I said, he's talking about how he wants to find out what happened to Zarnia. But he gets into this essentially a Catholic confession booth, and he's like, yeah, they told me how there was a whole bunch of like code phrases and passwords and whatever like that. It's a really up and up thing. I'm not up for all that, so I toss the rule book out the window and I'm just gonna wing it. So he gets in this confession booth and he's like, excuse me, Father, but I have not come for forgiveness. And he's like, oh, you're going to add more sins to the tally? And Lobo's like, yeah, I'm sure I need to give you a password or something like that right now, but I was hoping that you would just give me the information on my next target. And he's like, what? Who are you? And he's like, oh, I'm the whip. And immediately he's like, oh, what can I do for you? And he's like, well, rumor has it that you give information on who the next target is, and then you go and sell that information to the target so that they know who the assassin's coming for them. And the guy's like, what? And Lobo just punches through the wall, grabs this guy, and says, like, it sounds like a really great way to make a lot of money, but you are absolutely going against everything that the guild is saying. And he's just like, no, I'm loyal to the guild. You don't understand. I don't want to do it, but they're forcing me to. They're making me. And then all of a sudden, his eye pops out of the socket. Out emerges this horrific-looking tarantula, spider, scorpion thing, starts lunging after Lobo. Lobo stabs it with a knife and says, man, that's the second time in a week that two of my guys have died without me having to do anything. I'm very unsatisfied right now. And as he looks at it, he says, is that a tracker? And in through the skylight above comes, as Lobo describes it, a Thanagarian, a Daemonite, and a Martian, all coming in hot, all of them ready to go toe-to-toe with Lobo. And he's like, well, looks like I'll get my hands bloody after all. Okay. Sure. I really don't have anything to say about it. Like, it's exactly what the previous 6 issues of Lobo were. It's, if anything, it's a little bit weaker because it kind of feels like we're going back to step 1. You know, like, I know that this is the start of a new arc, but it feels like there was 0 character development in the first arc. Like, I don't know how best to explain it. I think ultimately it comes down to I just don't really like the character of Lobo. Like, I think he can be written well, and I think Cullen Bunn has a specific voice he's going for. I don't think it's a failure on the part of Cullen Bunn to not capture the voice of the character. I just don't like the character. Because the character is so, like, pompous and full of himself and whatever else there. And I mean, this even goes for previous Lobo as well, but at least that had a bit more of a humor to it. This one is just kind of like, okay, yeah, he's really good at what he does, and like maybe there's something there, but it's just not coming across. So I don't know. I'm just unimpressed in general. I think I'm probably going to end up giving this one like a 6.5. Art is okay. Art is fine. Like it looks good, but it's just the writing really does drag it down that much. I cannot get into this character. So here's hoping we at least get some cool, fun stuff to look at. But if it's going to be accomplished with all the sorry, not sorries like before, I'm already checking out before I'm checked in. Midnighter #1, written by Steve Orlando, art by Aiko. So this is spinning out of Grayson, where we've got Midnighter and all the stuff he did there with the God Garden, whatever else was going on. First things first, though, we have a sneak peek. We see Midnighter is asleep in bed, and all of a sudden he gets an alert. Someone named Local Asset 23 is reporting something, so he does a flip out of bed and starts putting on his clothes. We see whatever guy he was sleeping in bed with is like, oh, what, you're leaving already? You can come back. I don't work today. And he's like, nope, sorry, I have a hobby for violent citizens arrests, and I got to get out there. And so he starts putting on his quote-unquote work clothes as we see him getting into his Midnighter costume. So he goes down, starts talking to his asset 23, and they say, 5 idiots have bust up a cemetery and stole some really old gun that if you get shot by it, you are a mark for demonic possession. The other guns are real. That one probably is just fake. So as we see, a monster truck is driving away from the scene, just blowing up cop cars in its wake. It starts going down the line. And we see the driver, sees Midnighter standing in the middle of the road, and he's like, what the hell is that? Midnighter's like, you said there were 4 casualties already, right? And there are 5 people in the group. Better make the total casualty count 9. So immediately the monster truck tries to run him over. Midnighter grabs a street lamp post and jams it under the monster truck, causing it to flip upside down. Everyone else is just kind of scrambling like, oh, Jesus, man, you're a psycho. And he's just like, yep. So one of the guys pulls out the demon gun and says, if I shoot you with this, and you're going to have a demon possessing you. And he's like, good idea, not going to work, because my supercomputer brain can see all the shots that you would even possibly fire and dodge around them before you can even pull the trigger. So he leaps through all the fire, manages to crack this guy in the head and just snap his neck. However, in doing so, it causes the gun to fire again, and it ends up shooting one of the other members of the crew. And so that crew member is immediately possessed by this demon, and Midnighter's like, well, at least now we know it works. We see that, as far as I can tell, the demon has these giant horns that Midnighter manages to use one of his tools to snap off, and he's like, all right, well, at least it's fragile. So it starts attacking him. He manages to get, as far as I can tell, a giant blade made out of shards of glass, and throws it through the neck of the demon, decapitating it and saying like, well, all right, that's that. However, as soon as the demon dies, a young girl nearby starts getting possessed by the same demon, and the mother's just like, oh no, you can't, don't hurt her, don't kill her, she's just my daughter. And Midnighter tries to step forward, and everyone's like, whoa, dude, hold it. It's a little girl and you are a murderous psychopath. And he's just like, don't be ridiculous, step back. And he's like, no, you're gonna hurt this kid. And Midnighter's like, he pushes his way through, and he's like, look, it's a nice trick. It seems like demonic possession. However, I saw you beam the data over. You're not demons. You're actually aliens doing a body snatcher routine. So let me be very clear with you. I have the technology to track you through the multiverse, and I will absolutely go in and destroy your entire race via torture and murder if you do not let this girl right now. I am the Midnighter. Get out. And immediately the girl just turns right back to normal. Gets returned to the mom, and Midnighter's like, yep, well, the devil asks you where you were, tell him to find me. So that's the sneak peek alone. Getting into the issue proper, we go through the God Garden, and we see the gardener is running scared throughout. She's like deploying all these weapons, doing all these things. Nothing seems to be working. And a voice is saying like, oh, you can't run. Some gardens hang, others will hang you. And as she seems to be at an impasse where she's got a grenade ready to drop, the guy is able to open up doors the same way Midnighter does. And he kicks the grenade out of her hand before she's able to engage it. And he's like, look, the whole reason I came here is because of all these toys, all of these horrific weapons that you've managed to get collected here. I have one of my own. I don't have a cute name for it like all the ones you have, but maybe I'll call it their neuron nuke. And he zaps her. She falls unconscious, and he's just like, well, you thought you were safe hoarding all these up here, that you were untouchable, but no one's untouchable, and I'm here to steal the dragon's gold. So we go back down to Earth, and we see Midnighter is on a date in his civilian persona. He doesn't even have a name. His Tinder profile is just listed as M, and he's pretty straight up with his interests. He literally says like, superhumanly flexible, chronically new in town, supercomputer in my brain. So the guy he's on a date with is just like, oh, hey, you are actually a superhero? Like the M just stands for Midnighter? And he's like, yep, that's it. You ever done anything else with a superhero? You know, been on dinner with one? You ever been here? And he's like, no, not at all. But like, you know, Superman's been outed, so that's weird. So they're making small talk, and then all of a sudden, he gets a little spider sense, best I can say, Midnighter sense, and he says, "Get down!" And all of a sudden, a wall busts in with a portal, and we see. I don't know if it's supposed to be made up countries or if it's an alien threat, but they say that there is a place called Madoran who has traders that are hiding here. And so these people come in and they say, oh, you call your cause social justice, we call it treason, and you will be recognized as the terrorist you are. And then we see 3 people in this restaurant stand up and start pulling shots. It's a full-on bloodbath almost immediately. But the person who teleports in shoots a gun up in the sky, which causes something to happen to all the people in the room where they're basically their blood pressure spikes. They're just become unreasonably angry and all that sort of stuff. They're stuck in a helpless rage, and they all just start like fighting with each other, and it becomes chaotic. But before anything else can be done, before like they can continue to their attack on these as they see them traitors, one of them gets their head completely caved in by Midnighter, who's like, all right, Motorens, you said you were? Let me be clear. I have a computer in my head that lets me know every move you're going to make. I've already calculated a million ways that this fight ends, and I won the moment that you spoke out of your, quote, sphincter of a mouth. I'm the Midnighter, and you may have thought you were surrounding me, but in actuality, I'm arranging you. So they start opening fire, doing the best they can. Of course, Midnighter is just taking care of them, no problem. He's very, very brutally killing them. We don't get many shots that are directly showing them getting killed, but we get like an X-ray vision of showing their skulls getting cracked. So it's a bit much. We then see one of the human civilians is being held at gunpoint, and he's like, oh, my name is Matt, I'm real, please, I don't want to. And he's just like, if you shut up, he'll die unless the traitors come forward. And Midnighter's like, look, you think you've got this under control, that your gun is loaded, but hey, so is mine, and I'm a better shot than you. And so the guy pulls his gun off of the civilian, aims at Midnighter, takes a shot, misses because Midnighter just steps out of the way, and then we see in the reflection of this guy's glasses, Midnighter is already up on him with a punch charged. So after the fight, we see Midnighter's made his way down to a nearby pool hall that apparently he's a regular at, and the guy behind's just like, oh, hey, you want to eat all this greasy food, it might end up killing you, unlike all those other guys who try to kill you. And he's like, I've got accelerating healing, don't have to worry about that. And the guy says, hey, whatever happened to Apollo? You guys were really thick together. Is he coming out tonight? And he's like, no. Turns out that light can escape a black hole. And, they have a little chat right now. And the guy's just like, look, whether it's man or woman, I know it's they don't know what they got when they got it. And Midnighter's like, yeah, well, thanks. So he goes over to a pool table, takes one look at him. He's like, this looks like fun. And just immediately sinks all the balls and says, all right, good game, see ya. And the other people look at him, just look at the bartender like, seriously, this guy? And he's like, hey, you got something to say about it, buy something. So we go over to Moscow, where we see the second date with the guy that he met on Tinder or whatever. And he's showing him how the door technology works. He's just like, now we're in Moscow. Now we're in my apartment. Now we're in Oakland. And the guy's like, this is amazing. We're able to go anywhere in the world. This is just like, what, part of your powers or whatever? He's like, no, I got the technology to do it. It's like, whatever. But he did say, well, with all, we got to see the world and we didn't have to waste any travel time on like airplanes or anything. I wonder how we should make up that time. And we immediately get the beginnings of a gratuitous sex scene where they're, I think, in Midnighter's place. It just says his place. I'm not sure which one it is. You know what? Actually, it's too nice to be that. It's the other guy's place. So hours later, after it happens, the guy wakes up in bed. And he notices Midnighter's not next to him. He looks down on the ground. Midnighter's sleeping down there. And he's like, what are you doing? He's like, I was living on the street for years. I've never got used to a bed. And he's like, all right, do you eat breakfast? And so he goes out to make breakfast. And Midnighter makes the point of saying, like, look, I want to be clear. I'm not a hero. Like, I fight for normal people, but I am not one, and I want to make sure you understand that like you can handle that. And he's just like, hey, look, we've seen each other naked, we've done whatever, I think I can handle whatever you can throw at me. And so Midnighter sneaks up on him, is about to go in for a kiss, and then just injects him with this thing and saying, cool, this is a smart mark, you are now part of my network, you are asset 377. And the guy's like, what did you just do to me? And he's like, yeah, it's a big world out there, I can't see all of it at the same time, so I need eyes and ears around. You're now part of the network, you can report any like suspicious whatever just by tapping on it. And the guy taps on it, and we see it comes up with this full-on heads-up display and stuff like that. And he's like, okay, so what, like you can just keep track of me anytime you want it all? And he's like, nope, it's a one-way thing, you can call me and relay to me what's going on, but I can't contact you through it. It's total privacy on your end. And he's like, okay, I have to let you know, you're coming on a little bit strong here, but fair enough. And they talk briefly where he's like, oh, and you know, your previous guy, you do this with all the guys you were with? And he's like, well, all except for one. And they talk about Apollo briefly, and he was like, yeah, he was just too beautiful, too perfect. It's, you know, he deserved better, he was better than I ever deserved, to say the very least. And then he explains how he worked for the gardener and how Apollo never liked the gardener, and eventually Midnighter didn't either, but you know, it took too long. It was beyond that. However, at that moment, he gets a call from the gardener, and the guy's continuing on because he doesn't realize Midnighter's now stuck in his own head or whatever. He's like, I have to go right now. So he bails out, goes to the God Garden. The gardener's like still alive, has not been murdered, and just like, hey, this guy showed up, he took everything, and Midnighter's like, what do I care? You know, we're done. Like, I don't want anything else to do with you. And she's like, you don't understand. I lied to you. When I gave you your powers, when I did all that stuff, when I created you, I told you that every trace of your life before then was gone, that I erased it. But in actuality, I kept a file, and this guy just walked out with it. And Midnighter's like, okay, all right. He won't be walking for long. So that's the issue. I like it. It's complicated. I like it. I think it is a very frenetic series. It's got a whole lot of energy to it, and I like that sort of pacing it has. My only critique at this point is that it feels like I'm supposed to be more familiar with Midnighter as a character. Like, I don't know. From what we got out of Grayson, it felt like he was just kind of an antagonist. He was just kind of there in order to cause a bit of a problem, but you never really needed to know anything about his backstory to get the antagonistic part. Now that he's a protagonist, it feels like they're pulling on a little bit of not even Stormwatch, which was the previous comic it was in with DC here, like Wildstorm stuff, like really older stuff, and I'm just not familiar with that. Maybe this is all new creations. Maybe this is just what's happening here, but it feels like there's just a little bit missing where I'm not as familiar with the character as I need to be going into this. He explains the smart computer stuff. If that's really all I need, so be it. But I don't know. It just feels like this network and the asset stuff and whatever happened with Apollo, it's like I'm missing a step somewhere. And maybe it'll be revealed later, but it's confusing as it is right now. So I still think it's good. Art's definitely solid. So I'm going to say this is a 7.5. And hopefully we can just get that little bit extra of connection with the character so I can bump this thing up to an 8 something. Green Arrow 41, written by Benjamin Percy, art by Patrick Zircher. So before we get into that issue, we have the sneak peek that was included at the end of a Convergence issue. We open up with Oliver just driving up to Alaska, and he's like, I have been gone for a while. I just needed to go. I needed to get out for a while. We see on his phone, he's getting texts from Emiko saying, like, where are you, man? Things are getting crazy here. And he basically just kind of says, when I'm gone, I don't have to deal with all the Queen Industry stuff. I don't need to punch people. I mean, I'm 25, for God's sakes. I should be worried about getting laid and just going out and doing crazy things. We literally see a moment of him running with wolves, and he's like, that's the sort of stuff I should be doing as a 25-year-old. As we're driving alongside a truck, we see that the truck driver has this creepy clown mask on his driver's seat. So eventually we reach a town called Drown, where apparently the story is this town was, just a standard small town, whatever. But then one day a dam burst and the entire town was just completely consumed by water, and everyone that didn't manage to leave died. And one man stayed behind. This was his entire life here. He refused to leave. He'd been there for 40 years. And because we're in Alaska, his body was perfectly preserved in the glacial waters. And as Oliver enters a bar, turns out now it's preserved by whiskey, because he's been essentially pickled in a giant vat. And the idea is you take a shot of the whiskey that he is in, and you will get some sort of guidance in your life. Like he's a spirit trip or whatever. So he goes up to the bar, talks to the bartender. It's a beautiful woman, and he's like, "You are far too beautiful to be working here." And she's like, "It's my bar. What can I do for you?" And he's like, "I've come for the drowned man. Can I have a drink?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, totally." So they do a little bit of back and forth about, like, you can't ask why somebody's from Alaska or is in Alaska, because everyone's just running from their own stuff. Oliver takes a look at the drink and downs it, and he's like, "Well, that didn't do anything for me. I don't feel any smarter." And as the bartender goes off to deal with other people, he's like, "Hey, are you my Alaska girl?" And she's like, "What does that mean?" He's like, "Oh, it's the girl that you would drop everything for if she said, 'Hey, let's run away to Alaska.'" And she's like, "That's sweet and also somewhat sad that you would be able to do that. But yeah, once I get off work, you can buy me a drink." And all the while, we see that man that was driving the truck with the weird clown mask. He's watching this stuff happen, and he does not look too happy. So the girl goes outside, and we see she's abducted. She's brought into a truck with a bunch of lambs in there. This guy has a mask on, and he's like, "Oh, I bring the lambs to the slaughter." And Oliver's looking around for his girl, seeing where he can ask her out. And we see he eventually finds she's in the truck, gets into the Green Arrow outfit, and starts beating the crap out of this guy. Or at least it's implied he's in the Green Arrow outfit. And now that I look at it, he might just be Oliver. But he beats the mask off this guy, throws him down into the waters, and starts knocking it off. And he's like, "Yeah, all at once it catches up with me. This is who I am. I don't need to be your standard 25-year-old making bad mistakes and stuff like that and just getting over it. I'm the Green Arrow, and that's what the drowned man taught me." Cut over to Seattle. Emiko's being attacked by a bunch of ninjas. Her phone's going off. Oliver's saying, "Hey, I'm sorry I left. I'm coming home now." And Emiko's like, "Jesus Christ, it's too much going on here." So that's the sneak peek. Going into the issue itself, we're at a carnival or some sort of place with a Ferris wheel. There's a guy who's afraid of heights who's like, "Oh, it's going to rain. I don't want to go up there." And she's like, "It's going to be fine. Come on, get on." So the couple hop on board. We see a very pale man with white hair and white skin watching them from the crowd as they get up onto there. All of a sudden, the man is just pulled out of the cab of the carriage as it is going around up at the very top, and she freaks out and she's like, Brian, where are you?" And then something happens where she's grabbed as well, because when it comes back down, there's splatters of blood everywhere, but no sign of the people. So all of a sudden we see a man is doing his jogging the next day. As he goes down by the beachfront, we see there's a severed human arm sitting there, and it's like, yep, well, that's that. And all the while, Oliver's doing a narration over the top, and it's very high school poetry. No moon, no sun, everything's a shadow. It's easy to feel invisible in Seattle. Like, that kind of stuff. So we see some news reports saying, like, "Oh, an arm was found. We initially suspected the man who ran the Ferris wheel ride because he was a convicted felon who was out on parole or whatever." Cut over to Oliver picking up Emiko from school. And she's like, "Why do I have to go to school? I'm already so much smarter than all these people." And he's like, "It's social. You got to go to school. I am your legal guardian. We got to play by some rules if we're going to break all the other ones." And she's like, "Fine. But if I get another Snapchat for some gross sophomore, I swear to God, I'm killing that guy." So they go down the street and they pass by this weird lady who's apparently called the Wart Lady. And she's just there giving fortune cookie prophetic advice, saying like, oh, beware the night birds, close your windows, lock your doors, the night birds will steal you away. And she's got some crows landing on her, and she's like covered in warts and whatnot. Oliver shares a story about how he once took a picture of her, and like he felt bad about it because of how he was making her out to be this freak or this monster, despite the fact that she's just her own kind of weird. We see as she's giving this warning to people, Oliver's like, hey, we need to listen to this. She's from the streets. Streets are going to like listen to the streets. They're going to teach you things that you wouldn't hear otherwise. So someone else tries taking a picture of her. Oliver grabs the guy's phone and smashes it to the ground. So we cut over to some football star who's eating at a diner with a bunch of girls. Someone's like, hey, aren't you that guy from the team? Can I get a picture with you? And he's like, yeah, totally. We take a picture and we see it's once again the pale man with the white hair. And as we cut to later on that evening, the football player gets home with these girls. He steps out onto his balcony to get some fresh air. And as all the girls are inside, he is snatched up and lifted up into the sky. And news report says it looks like he fell, but it was from a lot higher than his second-story balcony. So as Oliver's watching this, Emiko's trying to do calculus homework, and she's just like, do you know how to take a limit? I don't understand how to take a limit. And Oliver gets back into the high school poetry of like, do you know how many windows I can see? And all these people could see me if they only looked back. And Emiko's like, how does that help me with calculus homework? And he's like, yeah, whatever. It's an equation or something. So he puts on his jacket, says he needs to go talk to Henry. He talks to Henry about the stuff at the beach and the stuff with this football guy, if there was any CCTV camera stuff. By the way, Felicity is gone. There is no mention of what happened to Felicity. There is no mention that happened to Diggle. We just have Henry back, and nothing else was constant. So he's like, yeah, I pulled some CCTV stuff. There's not a whole lot to go off of, but what we do have is there's this pale man who's too far away, too pixelated to get a facial recognition off of, but like he straight up has white skin, like bleached white. And we also have CCTV of a single frame of right before that guy was theoretically killed on the Ferris wheel, and there's this huge winged creature that is too blurry to make out, and the camera only captures once every like 2 seconds, so it must have flown in and flown out incredibly quickly. So we see that 6 more bodies have been discovered in the Tacoma, and they're trying to figure out what's going on there. All but one of them were African American males, so clearly something's going on. But we cut over to Queen Industries as someone is giving a business pitch saying like, yes, the Panopticon will be great for all these police places. We've already got a bunch of stuff lined up. We can pay back Queen Industries investment in less than half a year if they're so inclined. And as they're leaving, Oliver looks bored out of his mind. He talks to Broderick, and he's like, look, I understand, Oliver, you got a lot going on. I feel sorry for you. When I was 25, I didn't have to deal with any of this, but you got into this young, and it's the way you are. You have so many responsibilities. I hope you have it all figured out. And Oliver's like, I do not. But he cuts over to Green Lantern, and he's like, I'm going out on the streets. I'm listening. I'm trying to figure out what's happening here. So we see the ward lady still saying hurry home, the Nightbirds are coming. He goes down to a place called Pennytown, which is really just the slums. It's the bad side of town that no one really cares about. He comes across a woman who's about to have her purse snatched. She's about to get mugged, and he jumps in, stops the muggers, and manages to string them up via arrows. And he tells the woman, like, hey, you really shouldn't be here after dark. And she's like, I don't have a choice. I used to be walked by my husband, but he's gone along with all the rest, and now we just got to go. And she's like, what do you mean gone with all the rest? And she's like, yeah, people are disappearing from this place. It's been happening for months, and it's always the birds, because we can hear this shh sound whenever they fly in. And Arrow just walks with her back to her house, and he's like, why hasn't this been on the news? And it's like, have you looked around this place? Nothing that happens here is news. Nothing here is news at all. We're invisible. So if you want more, you got to go talk to Big Dog. He's going to be the guy who knows what's up. So we cut over to a dog fighting area. Some pit bulls are fighting, and then Big Dog says he's got a secret weapon. He's got a husky that's half-bred with a wolf. So he's been training it up. He's named it George. It's apparently a powerful name. He likes the name itself, but he's been training it, starving it, kicking it, giving it methamphetamines, and he's like, all right, let's see what it's got. And he tells it, get out there, go kill. And as it goes out into the fight, all of a sudden the dogs freeze up. They're looking up at the sky. And in comes one of the night birds that grabs Big Dog straight up out of nowhere, and everyone else just scatters. However, as George is still looking up at his master being drawn away, the other dog jumps in, goes for his neck, and takes a hefty bite. So Oliver shows up, he puts a concussive arrow, separates the two dogs. As George is whining on the ground, like bleeding out a little bit, Oliver picks him up and says, hey, it's all right, I got you. And so he lifts him up seemingly to go get some care. And the final page we get is, I think it's Big Dog, it might be one of the other people abducted, is tied up with some ropes, and we see the pale man is got a bottle of bleach, and he's just drenching this guy in it, just 100% head to toe without any care in the world. And one of the other things Oliver was talking about was how he always says that he dreams of the moon because the moon is able to escape the confines of the earth. It's free from this prison that we're all on ourselves. And then he goes on a whole thing about how it's said that the moon makes you crazy. That's where we get the idea of lunatic and lunacy. But he who controls the sky controls the tides of blood and dreams of death. It's a lot of high school poetry. That's kind of like my thing here. I always like it when Green Arrow is a bit more, I don't want to say fun, but lighthearted, I guess is the word I'm looking for here. I just, like, this feels really grim. And if that's the way we're going with it, so be it. I will adapt to it. But it feels like a huge shift from not only just the last arc, which I'm fine if you want to skip over that, but even like all of the stuff before that, the Jeff Lemire stuff that I really liked, that was already pretty dark. This feels like it takes it just so much further. So I don't know. It's fine. It's a decent first issue. I think that adding in the sneak peek to it kind of takes away a little bit from it, just because it is all just this philosophizing without actually saying anything. Just this, like, who am I really? What is going on? How do I know that? Like, shut up. Just do something. Be Green Arrow. We all know you're going to be Green Arrow. Why do we have to pretend you're not going to be Green Arrow? So, yeah. 6.5. Art's really good. Don't have a problem with that. It is, even the plot, like, I like the idea that there are just random people getting grabbed up. It seems to possibly even be like a race thing as well, so I'd love to see that tackled here. But it's just kind of like speaking without saying anything as of now. I'd like to see where we turn out, but it's just not doing anything too big yet. Bizarro #1, written by Heath, Corson, art by Gustavo, Duarte. So, beginning before issue #1, we have the sneak peek, where we basically just kind of get a rundown of what the book's going to be. We open up in Metropolis at a football game, where basically Bizarro says, oh, you're all fighting over... By the way, it's all done in standard Bizarro speak, where he says me not, and then like says the opposite of the thing he means. I cannot for the life of me keep that up. I will not be doing that unless it is absolutely critical to getting a line across. So I'm just going to say what he means. So Bizarro comes in and he says, no more, we're no more fighting over the skin ball. And they say, get him, boys. And all the fans are like, we hate you, Bizarro. And he's like, I love you too, citizens. And so at that point, we see a drug deal going down, and as they're trying to trade the money for the drugs, Bizarro busts in. He grabs the money and the drugs, eats all of it, and they're like, did he just, what? And he's just like, I have to go now, my stomach is tingling, and he flies off. We then see a bunch of social media posts saying, everything's ruined, Bizarro's ruining everything, can't the mayor do anything, as Bizarro is freeing the animals from the zoo. And then we get the secret origin of Bizarro, which is apparently on his planet, he was so good at fighting crime, all of it stopped, and so he was sent off on a rocket ship, and this is according to him. Realistically, he probably just sucks. Rocket ship bounced off of Mogo, and then crash landed on Earth. And when it landed, we see that it went through the wing of an airplane. And so Bizarro's first thing he saw as he woke up was Superman saving that airplane. And he's like, that's what I'll do. And so he put on a makeshift Superman outfit, drew the S in a mirror so it's backwards. And as we see him flying around, we see Clark Kent talking to Jimmy Olsen. And Clark's like, he means well, but yeah, he's an issue. And Jimmy says, people think he's Superman's brother. And Clark goes, he must be sent away immediately, anywhere else. And Jimmy says, maybe send him to Canada and say it's Bizarro America. To which point Superman says, that would actually be a decent thing. You would be able to take him on a road trip to Canada, and you could get yourself a pretty good coffee table book out of it. So Clark immediately gets called by Perry White to go do something, and Jimmy's just kind of like, maybe you're right. I could get some fame and fortune out of this. And so he's like, all right, let me try summoning Bizarro. So he puts himself into a situation. He's about to fall off a building, and he's like, all right, just got to wait for Bizarro to catch me. And he's falling and falling, and he's like, oh, dear God, Bizarro's not going to catch me. But then at the last second, he comes in, grabs Jimmy by the leg, and says, oh, I've got you, suicidal bystander. And so Jimmy pitches the book, and he's like, look, we send you to Canada, and you get unicorns and rainbows and stuff like that. And Bizarro's basically like, oh, you're Jimmy Olsen, Superman's lap. And he's his pal, Superman's pal. He's like, why do you want to go with Bizarro? And he's like, 'cause you're my friend. And Bizarro's like, oh, we're friends? Cool, awesome, let's go. So at that point, Bizarro offers to fly them. Jimmy immediately realizes that he's going to get slammed into a building if that's the case. So he's like, how about we drive instead? So they hop in a car, and then it's not even 5 seconds later that Bizarro's surfing on the hood of the car, and Jimmy's like, God, get back in the car. So that's the sneak peek. Issue 1 kind of hits the same points, but we pick up more or less where we left off. We're 2 hours outside of Metropolis. And Bizarro's just messing around with the radio stations, just keeps on picking random things. And Jimmy's like, can you just sit still? Like, we don't have to do anything here. They try playing, I forget the name of the game, but the I Spy thing. Or it's, you see something as you're driving, and Bizarro just keeps on picking the road, and Jimmy's just like, is it the asphalt? Because I swear to God, if it's the asphalt again, I'm going to lose my mind. Bizarro then tries biting into a burger. Jimmy says, don't get it everywhere. And he's like, I won't. And then it explodes everywhere. So at some point, we get that Bizarro needs to let his pet chupacabra named Cullen out for a stretch in the car. It starts going haywire. Jimmy's swerving all over the road. And we get some secret agents or something, some government agents are following them, saying, oh, keep a distance but don't lose them. That's an Omega level alien. We have to monitor his every move. So they're being tracked, I guess, but it doesn't come back in this issue. And then we get the flashback basically to exactly what the sneak peek was, of Clark saying, hey, that could make a good coffee table book, and Jimmy Olsen saying, yes, maybe that would be good. So as Jimmy is coming back from his daydream, we see Colin, who's it's a weird little alien looking thing, whatever. And Bizarro's like, oh, let me give you the secret origin of Colin. And it turns out that he was out in the desert. He was getting lonely. He wasn't getting any Tinder matches. And then all of a sudden he came across this weird little demonic chupacabra eating a goat's brain, and he just kind of picked it up, and despite the fact that Colin was absolutely not happy with it, Bizarro just wouldn't let him go long enough that he's like, all right, whatever, I guess I'm in this now. So somehow between all of that, Jimmy was so distracted that he ended up crashing his car, and I think it was when the chupacabra was going nuts. So we see Jimmy sitting in the driver's seat, and he's like cursing out the chupacabra, just be like, oh, this is all your fault now. You stay outside the car, Colin. And Colin's like sitting on the rearview mirror. There are cars behind Jimmy honking, and he's telling him to go around, as we see that Bizarro's just carrying the car over his head at a walking pace. So we go into a nearby diner, and someone says, oh, it looks like the circus is in town. And Bizarro's like, oh, circus, can we go to circus? And Jimmy's like, no. Yes, whatever it means, we're not going to the circus. So as they're getting some coffee refills and just, talking about what's going on, they mention something about a fertilizer convention that's happening in town, but then they point to the TV, and when they mention that they need a used car, and there's King Tut's slightly used car oasis, and we get a full commercial for Regis King Tut Tuttle at the Pharaoh of Pharaoh Deals, and he does just a bunch of Egyptian puns of saying like, get out of denial and into this hot rod. And we see that he has a daughter named Regina who doesn't want to follow in the family business. She's not wearing a costume. All the rest of the employees are wearing costumes. And he's like, so come on down and ask me about financing. We then cut over to the Oasis as he's chewing out his workers because they don't want to wear costumes either. And he's like, no, my father was a car salesman and he wore this stuff and he was buried in this mountain pyramid of cars and you'll bury me there one day. And they're like, I hope that's not true. So at that point, they say we haven't had a customer in weeks. In comes Jimmy and Bizarro, and they basically are just talking about getting the car fixed. But King Tut goes around and he's just like, oh, yes, hey, oh, don't worry about it. I'm not even going to ask questions on it, but you're a big friend. How about I show you the best deal we got here? And he walks him over to the hot rod and says, 0 down, 0 APR, I'll throw in all this other stuff. And we see Jimmy's thinking about just hopping in the car and leaving Bizarro behind. And he's like, oh, yeah, no, that'd be great. But I can't. I have bad credit and school loans and all that. I can't get this. I have no idea for the money. And somehow, it's not very well explained what's happening here, but King Tut comes in and he starts laying down the moves, and he's just like, oh, let's get coffees and crullers and whatnot. And we see, I genuinely don't know if it's literal, a wrestling match going on between the two of them as they're talking about buying this car. And Bizarro keeps butting in saying like, hey, but we just talking about this car, like getting this one fixed. And it ends up being Jimmy's just like, all right, fair enough, I'll go ahead and take this car and I'll go into debt so that me and my best friend can go across country, and that's that. And Bizarro lays his foot down, gets right up in King Tut's face and saying like, I don't know what you're doing to Jimmy Olsen, but he's my best friend and I will not have you messing with him. So we're here to fix this car, you're going to fix this car. And King Tut's just like, all right, fair enough, whatever you say, big man. So he gets in, and basically King Tut is like, your friend's a pretty good negotiator. And Jimmy has to admit, like, yeah, well, he's my friend. So the repair's going to be done the next afternoon. But as Jimmy's leaving, he bumps into Regina. They have a little meet cute, a good little moment there. And Jimmy's like, I got to go. Hey, Bizarro, wait up. And as they take off, King Tut goes to the daughter and just like, yeah, real great. That was the only customer we had, and you couldn't just reel it in. So at that point, we see Jimmy's trying to take some photos of Bizarro, probably for the book. And Bizarro says, hey, question, are you or are you not Bizarro's worstest friend? And Jimmy's like, repeat the question. And Bizarro gets all huffy that Jimmy didn't answer, goes off and storms away. We then get King Tut in his office is trying to summon the lords, like the Egyptian gods, Osiris and all that sort of stuff. The daughter pops in and says, hey, Dad, just want to let you know, I'm not going to join the family business. I got to follow my own dream. I want to make artisanal chocolates. And he's just like, oh, dear gods of Egypt, please give me the power I need to change my world. And we see all of a sudden he's imbued with some sort of power. He sees the Egyptian gods in front of him, and they're like, we have heard you praying to us. You are our lone acolytes. We will give you whatever you need. Behold the staff of Ra. It will give you the power to change your world. And he passes off and then teleports him back into his own world. And then it's revealed that the Egyptian gods are actually just a bunch of aliens who were like laughing it up, saying, oh man, did you see the look on his face? He actually thought it was Egyptian gods. That's crazy. Anyway, hey, we got to go find Chuck. I don't know where that guy even is. And so they take off. We then see Jimmy's following after Bizarro, saying like, hey, buddy, I didn't mean it. You're definitely my worstest friend. And he's like, worstester than Superman? And he's like, I have never been on a road trip with Superman. To which point Bizarro's like, oh, I always doubted it, quote unquote. So we see that all the rooms in this motel area that they get to are sold out for the fertilizer thing, so they've only got one room with a single bed. As they check into the room, they go to a vending machine. Jimmy's looking for change and whatnot, and Bizarro just elbows the machine and all the snacks come out. We go back over to King Tut. He uses the staff to convince his daughter not only to stay in the family business, but to wear the costume. And so she does that, and she's like, come on, my daughter, we have to sell cars. We get a weird-ass single-page, like full-page thing of Bizarro's dream, which is done in a really, like, I wouldn't say hyper-realistic, but a lot, like, sketchier and not as cartoonish. And as he's napping along with Jimmy, because he's the big spoon, Jimmy's eyes suddenly shoot open. He goes outside and he joins a whole crowd of people who are all saying must buy car. So they all march their way down to King Tut's lot, and they're all saying, yes, buy car, buy car, buy car. And Tut's standing on top saying, come Smallville and pay the blue book valuation. This will be my greatest quarter ever. And Bizarro wakes up looking for Jimmy. That's the issue. Explaining a book like this is hard because it feels like it's just a bunch of random things happening. However, I do want to express the cartoonish quality of this matched with the humor really works. It works for what it is. I think that there is something to how cartoonishly it is presented that makes you like not really care that it doesn't feel like it makes any sense. I don't know a better way to describe that, except for Harley Quinn being the obvious comparison, staying within DC. That one is fairly cartoony, but it has a lot of realistic elements to it. And while the humor works for what it is, I do think there is kind of a disconnect with how cartoony it is, and yet how realistically things are drawn. This one is so, like, you can just see the style on any of the covers here. It is so completely cartoonish that they can do anything, and it feels like it kind of fits. Like, that's the tone we're going for. So I really like that marriage here of the writing to the art. And then on top of that, I mean, they've got some good characters. I'm not going to lie. As much as Cullen as a Chupacabra is not really a character yet, I like him because he's just got great character design to him. Same with Bizarro, same with Jimmy Olsen. Just the way that they're drawn, the way that they speak, it's got a great character to him. So I'm in for this book. I know it's only 6 issues, but I am absolutely bought in on issue 1. So I'm going to give this first issue, I'm going to say an 8. I'm going to go up to an 8 on this. I really do appreciate the style to it. So we'll check out what happens in the remaining 5. And that's it. That is all the comics that came out from DC Comics this June 3rd, 2015. And the DCU will continue next week. I always have to put the emphasis on the U, so I'm not sounding like I'm saying DCU, because that's just all the books. Technically I'm correct in saying the DCU continues next week, but I'd be correct in saying that any week, except for April of 2020. That was a dark time. Anyway, this episode has gone on long enough. I did not take into account the fact of the sneak peeks making everything longer, so I'm sure I'm already over on time by like 30 minutes from what I usually hope it would be. So let me just wrap up this episode real quick and we'll get out of your hair. Next week, in no particular order, because order is a thing of the past, we have Batman, Catwoman, Detective Comics, Gotham Academy, Harley Quinn, Red Hood / Arsenal, Batman / Superman, Earth 2 Society, All-Star Section 8, which is a far different book, New Suicide Squad, Starfire, and Constantine the Hellblazer. So, a bunch of new number 1s out of that. Obviously some continuations with Batman, Catwoman, Detective, blah, blah, and blah. I can't say there's anything I'm specifically super looking forward to. I don't think I ever really read the Batman rookie stuff with Gordon as the Batman, so I'm at least a little bit interested in that. And then Batman Superman was doing some interesting things before Convergence took place, so we'll see what both those kick off to. Interested to see how it's going to go. Gotham Academy was always a good time too. But yeah, if you have any comments on any of the comics I talked about this week, last week, any week at all, go ahead and put them in the comment section down below this YouTube video. If you're watching the video version, if you're listening to the audio version, then boy oh boy, do we have a bunch of places you can go. We have a subreddit, we have a Discord, we have a Patreon. Just use Discord. We're really pimping out the Discord. Go check out that. Tell me I'm doing okay on the Discord. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however you consume this podcast. We got like 56 more episodes to go. Somewhere in that range. I can't do math right now, but I hope you'll stick it out with me. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.